I'm pretty sure everyone on the internet has heard and used the popular website called Wikipedia. Known as the largest collection of knowledge ever to be accumulated collaboratively in one place, the website is often stated to be the largest and most read reference work in history. We've all used it for work, school, and even research purposes. As the number of visitors on the website grows each day, so does its popularity. However, what most users of Wikipedia don't know is that the website has a truly disturbing and dark side. While everyone knows about Wikipedia, few people know of the hidden wiki. Located on the dark web, this ghastly website is inaccessible to the average internet user, as to access it, one would need to use the Tor browser. Unlike the free encyclopedia that we all know, Wikipedia's dark brother contains content that'll make your stomach turn. The disturbing links on the website lead to contract killers, illegal chemicals, banned weapons, and uncensored content. Due to all this, my experience with the website is truly horrific, and the story you're about to hear will explain why. I can remember this time of school very well because it was a period we all called the dark web phase. I can't recall how it started, but every student in school was obsessed with the dark web. My classmates would dare each other to go on the dark web, and anyone who didn't do it would be mocked and called a coward. Every new day, a student would come to school with a disturbing story and pictures telling us the horrors they'd seen on the dark web. These stories ranged from watching people get murdered on the notorious Red Rooms to purchasing illegal content from the infamous Silk Road. Basically, everyone was doing it, and the ones who weren't were dared to do the same. It soon became like a sick rite of passage, as using the dark web was the cool thing to do, and it wasn't long before it was my turn. I can still recall the fear in my heart that very day, as I was dared by my friends to visit the dark web. Even in my late teenage years, I didn't do well with morbid and disturbing content, so I wasn't sure if I was going to go through with it. However, I knew if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to face my friends. Looking back on it now, even if I was terrified, the peer pressure to do it was overwhelming. All my friends were dabbling in the dark web, and I told myself that there was no reason why I couldn't do the same. So that day, I gathered up the courage and I downloaded the anonymizing browser called Tor. For those who don't know the Onion routing browser, or Tor as everyone knows it, it is one of the few ways to access the dark web. Unlike the clear web, the dark web is a bit all over the place. It isn't uniform and it can be overwhelming. Google doesn't exist on the dark web, as it has its own bizarre search engines. There are a few popular ones called Not Evil and Torch, as these are what people use to get around the dark web, but using those search engines can be very tricky for new users, especially if you don't know what to search for. However, there was a particular website I had been told to visit by my friends, and this website was called the Hidden Wiki. It's a bit difficult to properly explain what the Hidden Wiki is, as it's not a traditional search engine. But to put it in layman's terms, it's essentially a collection of popular dark web links. Once I had reached the Hidden Wiki website, I was greeted with numerous websites that led to illegal weapons, hard drugs, and snuff content. There were a lot of links to choose from, as I saw most of the major dark web websites like the Cannibal Forum, where real-life cannibals discuss how it feels to eat human flesh and their fresh organs. I even saw a link to the Human Experiments page, a ghastly forum that is considered to be one of the most disturbing websites on the deep web. This was because the people behind the website carried out morbid experiments with living people. There are apparently experimental videos of these people injecting bleach into pregnant women, sterilizing unwilling participants, subjecting infants to radiation exposure, and many other horrifying things I can't bring myself to say. I continued scrolling on the Hidden Wiki website as I took it all in. And for some unknown reason, I was drawn to a particular link called Steak and Cheese. Often called Rotten.com, this website is known for having a large collection of gruesome, violent, and macabre videos. After I clicked on the link, I was taken to the Steak and Cheese homepage. The content I saw there is enough to make any man throw up everything he'd eaten that day. I'm still disgusted to relay the things I saw, as they were pretty much extreme snuff content. There were numerous videos of children being tortured in chains. Most of them weren't over the age of 8. Another video called The Divine Feast showed live cannibalism as it depicted a man eating butchered human parts. The more I looked through the website, the more horrified I got, and just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I came across a video called True Eaters. I saw the horrific frames of the people in the video as they happily ripped apart little animals like kittens and rats before shoving the animals' carcasses down their throats. I had only been on the website for a few minutes, but I already wanted to leave. I was getting second thoughts about the whole thing, and I didn't think I could see anymore. But before I could leave, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a link to a video called Miss Necrophilia. From what I could tell, Miss Necrophilia seemed to be a dancer. She had a lot of videos on her page where she would sing songs and dance with what seemed to be plastic mannequins. Looking back on it now, I don't know why I didn't just leave the website at that point. I had already seen more than enough disturbing content, but my curiosity got the better of me as I was drawn to Miss Necrophilia's video. It was the only normal video I had seen on the entire Steak and Cheese website, so I caved in and clicked on the video link to watch the full thing. At the start of the video, the woman who I assumed was Miss Necrophilia just stared into the camera. She had put a lot of black mascara above and below her eyes. I can still recall the look in her eyes as she kept staring into the camera. It's hard to put into words, but her eyes looked completely empty, and it seemed like she had no soul. The video then cut to her living room where she had 4 mannequins that were propped up in chairs behind her. The living room had better lighting, so I was able to see better. But that's when I realized there was something odd about these mannequins. For starters, they looked a bit too lifelike for mannequins, as the hair on the mannequins that resembled a man in his 40s looked a bit too real. I also had similar thoughts for the other 3 mannequins. The first 2 were mannequins of 2 small children, a boy and a girl that looked like they were around the ages of 9 and 10. As Miss Necrophilia carried the mannequins around, I noticed the movements of their fingers, and it looked really off, and I had a gut feeling that was telling me this was wrong. Even with the bizarre way the first 3 mannequins looked, it was the last one that threw me off the most. This particular mannequin resembled a 10-month-old infant. But what bothered me about this one was the fact that it looked like a pale life-size doll. Miss Necrophilia then picked up the bigger male mannequin, and she began to dance with it while singing an oddly jolly tune. I couldn't tell what she was singing as the song was in another language, but as she danced around singing with her mannequin, it felt like there was something I wasn't seeing, and that's when it hit me. The horrific realization finally dawned on me when Miss Necrophilia brought the life-sized doll closer to the camera while dancing, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. Thousands of maggots were all over the male mannequin she was dancing with. And that's when my brain finally put it together. They weren't mannequins or life-sized dolls. These were corpses. They were all stiff and embalmed in something, which is why I mistook them for mannequins at first. If she hadn't brought them closer to the camera, I would have never realized that they were starting to rot. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. My mind struggled to comprehend the gruesome atrocity that it had just seen, and I was frozen in shock. I tried to find an explanation as to why a woman would be dancing with rotting corpses in her own living room, but I couldn't. Things took an even more morbid turn when I noticed the picture in the background. It was a family picture that showed a pregnant Miss Necrophilia, her husband, and her 2 children, and they all had a striking resemblance to the corpses. My stomach couldn't take it anymore as I felt the bile in my stomach rush towards my throat. Even after throwing up my lunch, I still couldn't move as I was transfixed to the screen, and I couldn't move my hands to stop the video. Looking back on it now, I don't know how long I stayed transfixed to the screen. It could have been 15 minutes or more, but after some time, a dialogue box popped up on my screen, and it took me out of the horrific trance. The odd chat box came from an anonymous chat room on the dark web, and the message read, "You've been watching this video for a really long time, buddy. I'm guessing you enjoy Miss Necrophilia's content. I'm also a huge fan of hers. You know she takes requests, and I'm sure Allison will make the perfect candidate as the next dancing corpse. After all, she takes ballet classes." My heart dropped to my stomach once I saw the name Allison, and I let out a guttural scream. I told myself that it couldn't be, but I didn't believe in coincidences. Allison was the name of my 12-year-old little sister. I had no idea how the person on the other side of that message knew that. What disturbed me even more was the fact that she had ballet classes after school, and they were held every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I looked at the date again, and the 16th of April 2010 fell on a Friday. With adrenaline and fear rushing through my body, I got my phone and dialed the police. I was talking so fast that I was basically incoherent. Even after my call, the police thought it was a prank call, so I immediately called my mom and asked where my sister was. She told me school was over and she'd just dropped her off at ballet classes. I then urged her to call the ballet school and confirm Allison was still with them. But when she called, the school told her Allison was nowhere to be found. All the color drained from my face as I thought the worst. I tried to explain everything, but I couldn't find the words. I knew this wasn't something I could properly explain on the phone, so I rushed to my mom's office. It was pretty close to our home, so I was able to get there in less than 8 minutes. I arrived there panting and out of breath, and I took a few seconds to calm down before telling my mom everything. When I was done, my mom walked up to me and slapped me across the face. She'd never hit me before in my life, and I knew exactly why she did it. I had single-handedly put my little sister's life in danger, and it was all because of a stupid dare. I could see the tears and fear in her eyes as she dialed 911. When the line went through, she calmly told them everything that happened. We were then told to wait at least 24 to 48 hours before declaring her missing, but my mother pleaded with the officers to do something now as she felt time was of the essence. My mother's longtime friend, Officer Daniel Barnes, was a deputy on the force, and he was able to convince them to start a search. In an hour, officers littered the streets with pictures of my little sister in hand, asking if anyone had seen her. After I told the officers everything, I also joined in the search for my little sister, and with every passing hour, the beating of my heart grew faster. We searched for 13 hours straight as we covered the entire town, but we didn't find anything. My mother, who had completely broken down into tears, couldn't look me in the eyes. I didn't blame her as I was the only one to blame. As the tensions kept rising to greater heights, I started to think the worst as I pictured Allison brutally killed by psychopaths, and I wondered whether I would see her in Miss Necrophilia's next video. Both the officers and the rest of the search party were visibly tired now. They already started slowing down, and people wanted to go home and continue tomorrow. But right before the search was about to be stopped, we received word that she'd been lying on a bench at the edge of town. We drove as fast as we could till we reached the location, and my mother cried tears of joy as she held Allison in her arms. She was examined by the paramedics, and they said she'd been chloroformed, but she was fine. When she regained consciousness, we asked what happened, and she told us she was taken from her ballet class a few minutes after our mother had dropped her off. She says she couldn't remember much after he grabbed her as the world was fuzzy, but the one thing she didn't forget was the only thing he told her. When I asked what he said, my little sister looked me dead in the eye and said, "Tell Donatello I said hello." This entire ordeal put the whole town on red alert. Our family had to move in with my mom's sister as the authorities monitored our home to make sure it was safe. I was questioned again, and I told the officers everything. I also assured them that I used an anonymous browser, but they told me that didn't matter with the kind of people on the dark web, as accessing my IP address or my computer's webcam and history is easy with the pedigree of hackers that roam around the dark web. The detectives believed this was how they were able to get such privileged and personal information in a matter of seconds. The authorities made numerous attempts to track the unidentified man who had taken my sister, but just like everything else on the dark web, he was untraceable. And no matter how much they tried, it was like he had vanished into thin air. They also tried to locate Miss Necrophilia, but that proved impossible too, as her videos had been scrubbed off the Steak and Cheese website. As the investigation came to a close and I went back to school, I'd heard the entire dark web phase had died down as both teachers and the authorities were actively warning students against using or visiting the dark web. It took a while for our family to get over that incident. My mom said she had forgiven me, but I could never forgive myself for what I put my family through. So please, to all who are listening, take my story as a warning to stay far away from the dark web because, while it might seem fun to you at first, I know full well that a simple link from the dark web can scar you for life. The story you just heard was based on an anonymous report from the town of Franklin, Tennessee, to the FBD, Franklin Police Department, on the 16th of April, 2010. The FPD deputy at the time had received a frantic call from an unknown caller that afternoon, and the caller was apparently screaming about how he'd seen a strange woman dancing with corpses on the dark web. The caller then told the deputy that he believed he and his family were going to be killed by the woman in the video because she wanted to dance with their corpses next. But before the deputy could have said or done anything, the line was cut. Numerous attempts were made to contact the panicked caller, but he never picked up his phone. The Franklin authorities then tried to trace the call, but that proved fruitless as it was hard to pinpoint the caller's exact location. With no way to track down the caller, the detectives tried to find the unidentified woman who was dancing with the corpses and uploading the videos on the dark web. While they were able to find records of dark web users who had witnessed and watched these morbid videos on the dark web, they weren't able to find the woman or the original videos, as they had all been scrubbed. With absolutely no leads, the case was never officially opened or pursued. As the years passed by, the case went cold and it was eventually forgotten over time. But to this very day, no one knows what happened to the frantic caller or the bizarre woman the detectives named the Macabre Dancer, who's still out there somewhere filming herself dancing with corpses and uploading these disturbing videos onto the dark web. I purchased a laptop on the dark web. I never should have bought that laptop. It turned my life completely upside down. It all started on a late-night browsing spree, the kind that often lead me down the rabbit holes of obscure dark websites offering all kinds of tantalizing offers. You could find anything imaginable there, from legal to the illegal and everything in between. That's when I found it. A listing that seemed innocent enough, buried among a jumble of more questionable items. Old laptop, perfect for refurbishing. Minimal wear and tear in good working condition, the ad read. I am a tech enthusiast who is always looking for new projects, and this one was too good to pass up. The only reservation I had was the seller's lack of reviews, and those that existed were vague, making it hard to tell if the product was legit. But the price was unbeatable, and I figured it was worth the risk. As I clicked buy now, a sense of unease settled in my stomach, but I brushed it off. I needed a distraction, and the laptop seemed like the perfect project. When the laptop finally arrived, it looked a little worn, but had a certain retro charm to it. I wiped it down, plugged it in, and powered it up. The screen flickered to life, revealing a handful of files. Most were harmless, old documents, music files, and applications, but one stood out. Do not open. It read in bold red lettering. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse. Curiosity gnawed at me. It had to be a joke left by the previous owner. I was a seasoned hacker. I could of course handle a simple file. Taking a deep breath, I clicked. Immediately, the screen filled with static. The sound was sharp, cutting through the silence and sending a chill down my spine. I wanted to close the laptop, but I continued to watch, mesmerized. The video appeared, grainy and dark. A strange-looking figure stood before a flickering candle, chanting in a language I couldn't understand. His voice was low and haunting. Suddenly, he turned to the camera, revealing his hollow eyes that seemed to stare straight through me. The video then abruptly cuts off, leaving only an eerie silence. I closed the laptop, a little taken aback but not totally shaken. It's just a video, I whispered to myself, nothing more. But I had no idea that the real disturbances were only about to begin in my life. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications. My social media accounts were filled with strange messages, and people I hadn't spoken to in years were frantically emailing, calling, and texting me. I was overwhelmed, trying to make sense of all of it. Then an old school friend called, his voice sounding shaky. He asked if I was okay, saying he'd received an email with a video of me trying to hang myself. I froze in shock. "I'm sending it now," he said. The email arrived, and my heart raced as I clicked the video. It was a grainy recording of me in my living room, standing beneath a noose. I watched in horror as I positioned myself to go through with it. I had no memory of this. I had never done anything like this. How could this even happen? I asked myself. Just then, the doorbell rang, followed by loud banging. My stomach churned. Was it the police? Had someone reported the video? How am I going to explain any of this to them? Hesitant, I opened the door, bracing myself for a tough conversation with the police. But instead of the authorities, it was my girlfriend, Stella. Her mascara was smeared all over her face from crying, but her expression was nothing but pure fury. Without a word, she stormed in, shoving me back onto the couch. Before I could react, she kicked off her shoe and started hitting me with it. Hard, relentless blows as I tried to shield myself. "Stella, wait! I can explain!" I pleaded. "That video was fake. I wasn't trying to do anything." She paused, her chest heaving with anger, then pulled out her phone. "Explain this then," she spat, thrusting the screen in front of me. It was another video, this time of me sitting on a beach with a woman who wasn't Stella. The two of us were laughing and flirting while she sat on my lap. Tears streamed down Stella's face. "Are you saying this is fake too?" she asked, her voice cracking. I stared at the screen, dumbfounded. I didn't recognize the woman in the video, nor have I ever been to the beach as well. None of it made sense, but before I could even form a response, Stella threw her shoe at me one last time and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I was left sitting there, reeling from the sheer impossibility of it all. Then my phone rang again. This time, it was my parents. They said they'd received a news clip showing me in jail after a drunk driving accident. A news clip? Of me in jail? How could that even be possible? I asked myself again as I stood in my own living room, completely bewildered. My head spun as I spent the next few hours trying to calm down friends and family, assuring them I was fine and that it was all some prank. But was it really a prank? I reluctantly glanced at the laptop as a wave of dread washed over me, my heart pounding in my chest as I slowly approached it and opened it again. The screen flickered to life. This time, all of the files were gone except for two. The original Do Not Open file and a new one labeled Victims. A list appeared that was long and chilling. I scrolled down each entry, accompanied by photos and usernames from the dark web. People who were probably no longer alive. My blood ran cold when I saw my name. I was number 178, the most recent victim. My status was being shown as in progress. As I clicked on my folder, a photo of me appeared, along with details only someone who had been watching me would know. Some of the other usernames on the list were familiar too. People I'd seen online, on the dark web, in forums I frequent. I often wondered where they suddenly vanished. Now I knew why, and I realized I might be next. Panic surged through me. I slammed the laptop shut, grabbed it, and raced out the door. I drove for hours until I found a secluded spot near a dumpster. I tossed the laptop out and drove over it several times to make sure it was destroyed. For the first time in days, I felt some relief. But it didn't last long. When I returned home, my blood froze. The laptop was sitting on my desk as if it had never left. A chill crept down my spine as I stood there staring in horror. Paranoia consumed me. Right then, I knew I had a huge problem on my hands and had to find a solution for it, no matter what. So I started looking at online forums dedicated to paranormal activities and digital hauntings. Maybe, just maybe, someone else had encountered a similar experience. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing furiously, desperate for answers. As I scrolled through hundreds of posts, I found one that caught my eye. It was headlined, "The Cursed Laptop." The poster detailed a story eerily similar to mine. After purchasing an old laptop from the dark web, he began receiving ominous messages and videos that terrorized the user. His advice was simple but chilling. Confront it. Do a cleansing ritual. So I researched further on the dark web, uncovering an array of rituals involving salt, candles, and incantation. I gathered the supplies, feeling both foolish and desperate at the same time. As night fell, I prepared the ritual in my dimly lit apartment, following all the instructions to the letter. I lit a row of candles on either side of the room and drew a circle on the middle of the floor using salt. Once I stood inside the circle, I started with the incantation. Spirits of the digital realm, I call upon you to reveal yourself, I said, my voice slightly trembling. I seek an end to this torment. Nothing happened at first, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But then, the laptop flickered violently. The screen flashed, and the ominous file reappeared, more vivid than before. The strange figure was looking at me intently through the laptop as if he was trying to get a measure of me. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. Even the light from the candles was being blocked from illuminating the room by some unseen powerful force. And then slowly, the candles started to spread a little bit of light around the room, casting a creepy-looking silhouette by my side. Right then, I felt a cold and putrid breath against my neck, and a voice whispered in my ear, "You've invited me in, Anthony." I could feel his presence just behind the salt circle, and I realized he couldn't get closer. This was the same figure that appeared on the video first when I opened the laptop. But in real, he looked a lot more terrifying. He carefully stood at the edge of my vision, his dark silhouette blurring the boundaries of reality. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The figure stepped closer, its face a distorted visage of rage. "You opened the door, and now you must pay the price." Terror clawed at me inside, but I forced myself to stand my ground. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to refurbish the laptop." "It's too late for remorse," he hissed, a chilling echo of my own fear. In that moment, I remembered the ritual. I needed to confront this entity, to assert my will. "I reject you. I will not be your victim. Spirits of the digital realm, I command you to leave," I shouted at the top of my lungs. The temperature dropped sharply, and the shadows lengthened. I felt a pull, a tug of war between my will and the spirit's malevolent force as everything started to swirl around me. The figure roared in anger, while the screen flickered wildly as it struggled against my command. Suddenly, my room was plunged into complete darkness, and the power finally returned a few seconds later. When my gaze shifted towards the table, I realized the laptop was gone. It had disappeared. Finally, out of my life for good. Oh, thank God and the Holy Spirits. After that day, I changed all of my electronic devices. Yes, I replaced every one of them. I even deleted my email and other online accounts and opened completely new ones. I didn't want to leave anything to chance. In fact, it has been over 3 months since I visited the dark web, and I don't plan to visit anytime soon. Then I also managed to get back with my girlfriend, Stella. Somehow, I was able to convince her of my innocence. So one day, while we were on vacation and having a good time, a message suddenly appeared on my phone. Attached was a single folder. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The folder's name flashed at me in bold red lettering. "Do not open." How many of you have been on the deep web? And no, I'm not talking about the child's play of downloading to enter the first level of the deep web and then leaving. That's for amateurs. I mean, how many of you have been on the real deep web? The part of the deep web where scary things really happen, where the government hides all the secrets, and where red rooms are rampant. Unless you're hackers, I don't think you've been there. So I have to tell you a story. A story where you'll learn that no matter how prepared you are for the deep web, there will always be someone or something that will surprise you. I still remember everything as if it was yesterday. The date was February 14th, 2022. I remember because it was Valentine's Day, shortly before my girlfriend and I had separated. She simply contacted me by phone and crying said that everything between us was over. I didn't understand why, but when I tried to call her, she didn't answer. I went to her house worried, but some neighbors told me that she had moved a few days before and that she was with someone else. I didn't understand what happened to her, but I was heartbroken, so you can imagine how I could feel on Valentine's Day. I was going to spend that day at home exploring the deep web, going further than I had ever gone before. I was convinced that no one would catch me. I had always been a very good hacker, and after being with my ex-girlfriend who worked in computer security, I had become much better. I felt invulnerable. I felt that no one could catch me, no matter what files I investigated and whose files they were. The more I researched, the deeper I got into the deep web. I felt I was close to reaching my limits, close to discovering something and maybe get into trouble. That would be a fun activity for Valentine's Day. As I continued to move forward, a pop-up surprised me. A pop-up on the deep web? I must admit I was very surprised. There are no advertisements on the deep web. This had to be something directed at me. But how could they do that? How could they direct a message to me? Did anyone know what I was doing? That was impossible. I had taken all the necessary measures so that no one would launch an attack on me. When I saw the pop-up, I noticed that it looked like an advertisement. Or rather, an invitation. It looked like an invitation to play a game. Suddenly, a text window opened. Someone started talking to me. Normally, I wouldn't talk to him as this can bring consequences. But his message left me so perplexed that I had to reply. Hi, Rick. You seem to be a very curious guy. Would you like to play a game with us? No, thanks. I think I'm good. Maybe another day I'll do it. I decided to answer him sarcastically, but not be so confrontational either. He may have been uncomfortable with that message, but I decided not to indulge him. I wouldn't ask him how he knew my name or anything about this game since that's what he expected me to do. I assumed that the attacker was related to the government entity I was investigating. Although I never assumed that these people would send me these kind of messages. Part of me thought it made sense. After all, I was on the deep web. Rick, unfortunately, I have to insist that you play. Otherwise, your ex-girlfriend will never be released. Reading this, I was shocked. How could he possibly have said that? And how did he know about my girlfriend? How could he say that she was kidnapped? At that moment, I realized something that terrified me and made me discover that I was involved in something really serious. You're not from any government entity, are you? The game is simple. You just have to guess where I am. It's not too hard, is it? You only have one chance to guess right. I can be behind your bathtub, hidden in the kitchen, or in the basement. As I read these words, I was completely paralyzed. From one moment to the next, I went from being bored at home, sad to arrive on Valentine's Day without my girlfriend, and in the next few minutes, I was worried that there was a psychopath in my house. There's no way this psycho is really here. He has to be lying. We both know I'm not lying, Rick. Upon reading this message, I immediately disconnected the webcam and microphone from my computer. Did you really think you were going to scare me by hacking my webcam? Who says I hacked your webcam? Don't you understand that I'm in your house? If you don't give me an answer in the next 3 minutes, I will kill your girlfriend. Reading that message, I was completely perplexed. There was no way. How could he hear me if I disconnected my webcam? Unless he had microphones installed in the house. That means that he could be in my house. 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Desperate and without thinking, I went to the kitchen to get a knife and started checking the places that the man told me he could be. I knew it was a very bad idea. I knew I could die for this, but the fact that he told me that my girlfriend was trapped and kidnapped made me make a quick decision without thinking. I had to search as soon as possible. I quickly checked the kitchen with a knife in hand, but there was no one there. There was no place to hide in the kitchen either. Clearly, the man wanted me to quickly discard this place. The next place was the bathroom. I quickly opened the bathroom doors and turned on the light. No one was there. At that moment, something caught my attention. The bathroom curtain was closed. I always leave it open. Terrified, I approached slowly with the knife. I didn't have the energy to do it. I felt like I was going to cry and drop the knife and run at any moment. But I didn't. I had to do it. I had to catch whoever was invading my house just to make sure my girlfriend was okay. With a war cry, I ran to the curtain and opened it. Behind it, there was no one. At that moment, I felt a noise behind me. I peeked through the bathroom door, and in the distance, I saw the basement door. It was opening slowly, and behind it, in the middle of all the darkness, I could make out only 2 dark eyes staring at me. I immediately ran to my room. I heard the door behind me open and someone running towards me. I didn't turn around. I just ran, and as soon as I entered my room, I locked the door. On the other side, someone was banging on it violently, trying to get in. I could hear screams full of anger, while that person was slamming the door without success, since it was a very hard door. 30 seconds! You were in my basement. There's your answer. You were in the basement. Now you're behind my door. Now let her go. Suddenly, the door started banging louder and louder. I thought they wouldn't be able to break it, but at that moment, I realized that it would surely be destroyed in a matter of seconds. And so from 1 second to the next, the door burst open with a kick and a huge man rushed in. As soon as he saw me, the man grabbed me by the hair and dragged me violently across the floor and threw me against the wall. Before I could react, the man grabbed my head again and pulled me towards the computer. As I looked at it, I saw that there was a camera in my basement. The man held a cell phone to my ear, and I heard a titular voice come out of it. "You were right. I was in the basement, although you were wrong that I was behind your door. As I said, we will free your girlfriend." At that moment, it was seen on the computer camera that the closet in my basement opened, where my girlfriend's corpse fell. "Our clients are very satisfied with your story. You deserve to know the truth." "What have you done to her? Why?" "Congratulations. Your girlfriend never left you. We forced her to say that before we killed her. That neighbor who told you she moved, that was me. It was nice to meet you, although I'm sorry to tell you that your girlfriend was always in this basement, even though we cleaned it constantly so it wouldn't generate odor." "Why?" "Because you were curious. Do you think you wouldn't attract attention in the deep levels of the deep web? A lot of my clients belong to cults, and you can't mess with these people. They have more fun than you think, and you have a lot of fun. But all good things must come to an end." And with that said, it was all over. The man casually let me go and simply walked out of the front door as if he had been a guest of mine. Meanwhile, the corpse of my girlfriend remained there, in my basement. I could never recover from what happened. I could never again date a new girl, go on the deep web, or build any kind of trusting relationship. What happened that day has traumatized me forever. And you know what the worst part is? I feel like I'm not done yet. Sometimes I see strange people looking at me in the street with a strange smile. I don't feel that these people are the ones who attacked me, but the cult that hired them. I feel that they will always be there, watching me, having fun with me, ready to attack me when I least expect it. Hey, Richard here. I know you've probably heard a lot about the deep web. Nowadays, it's a topic that's pretty much burnt out, mostly because everyone knows how to watch out for the dangers of the deep web. But at the time, about 10 years ago, it was not so normal. At the time, the deep web was all the rage, and we all wanted to go in without knowing what we were dealing with. But still, we were prepared for the deep web. We had gone in before, and we knew what we should and shouldn't do. But nothing was going to prepare us for what happened that night. That day, we encountered evil personified, with people so cruel and twisted that they surpassed anything we expected, even for the deep web. At the time, we were freshmen in a college of technology. Me and my two friends were pursuing a degree in web design, and we were curious about everything related to the web, even, or rather, especially everything related to its darker side. The day before it all happened, one of my friends told us that he found a page on the deep web that he wanted to show us. He told us that we were not going to believe what we were going to see, but that we had to go to his house to do it. Alan was relatively mysterious that day, but he was like that, and with his extensive knowledge of the deep web, we believed him. What he wanted to show us was surely something big. The next day, Victor and I went to Alan's house, prepared to encounter anything. Once we entered, his parents waited for us. They were both two people who seemed to be very calm. They were very relaxed and friendly. Alan always told us that his parents were very creative and progressive, and seeing their house full of artwork painted by them, I believed him. Alan got along very well with his parents, who asked us if we wanted something to eat, and they said they were going to be busy doing their own thing, so they wouldn't bother us. After eating pizza, we went to Alan's room and turned on the computer while we talked about school. I couldn't help but notice that Alan was very excited. What he was going to show us must surely be huge. Once the computer was on, Alan opened Thor and started browsing through some pages. Without waiting long, he opened a notepad and copied a URL to a web page. Once he got to that page, Victor and I understood perfectly well what was happening. Alan had entered a live red room. As soon as we walked in, we immediately told him to get out. Not only was that place completely immoral and perversive, but it was also dangerous. We had heard several stories of how many people had been hacked just for being there. If for some reason they suspected us, they would surely try to hack us and look for us. Maybe I was being a bit exaggerated, but I felt that our lives were really in danger. I looked around and I seemed to be the only one scared. Victor was telling him to stop, but he was just as curious as Alan. I decided to play along and stay with him. There was nothing to indicate that I was here anyway, since this wasn't even my PC. Alan seemed to know what he was doing. Otherwise,
He wouldn't put himself at risk like that. We stayed for a while watching the Red Room without voting or participating. And what we saw changed my life forever. I don't know how to tell you that what I saw was the ugliest and scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. On the monitor, I could see a man with a black leather suit, covering his whole body, even his face. The man was torturing the victim horribly. A middle-aged woman tied to a chair. After torturing her, the man grabbed a huge, strong thread and tightened it around her neck. At that moment, I knew what was going to happen, but I turned anyway. I didn't want to see an innocent person murdered in front of me. Turning around, I could see Alan and Victor watching in fascination. They seemed to be amused. "Is it over?" "Yes. They've taken her away." "Come on, turn around. They're talking in the chat room." As I turned around, I saw my friends open the chat room and read the messages. They all seemed to be strangely casual messages. They were all asking each other how their day had been, and the answers seemed completely normal. Suddenly, I read a message that caught my attention. "Are you guys having a good time? Want some more pizza?" Reading that, Victor and I froze in fear. That message, was it a coincidence? It was a Friday night. A lot of people must eat pizza, right? We both stared at the monitor, wondering if we should reply. Alan, on the other hand, didn't look at us. He simply wrote without consulting us. "We are perfect. I'll have some more pizza later." "Alan, what the hell are you doing?" "Oh, I'm sorry. Was I rude? I didn't ask you guys if you wanted more pizza." "Why did you answer them? Have you lost your mind?" "I just didn't think it was polite not to answer them. After all, they made us pizza while they were very busy." "What are you talking about?" "My parents, the ones in the Red Room." "Alan, are you feeling okay?" "I feel perfect. Everything turned out perfect. You guys thought I invited you to see a simple Red Room. You couldn't do that from your own home. I invited you because I needed volunteers. They needed kids to participate in the..." "Look, man, I don't know what kind of psychotic joke you think you're making on us, but I'm not in the mood to take it." With that said, Victor approaches the exit door. As he opens it, he is surprised to see someone behind it. It's Alan's parents, just the man in black who was in the Red Room. "Oh, great. You're a volunteer." Surprising me and Victor, they all walked into the room and addressed us. At that moment, I don't remember much else. Just the man in black running towards me with a handkerchief in his hand that he put in my mouth. And after that, everything went black. When I woke up, I was in the same Red Room that I had just seen on the computer. The lighting was very intense because of the red lights on the ceiling. There were about 6 or 7 lamps above us, and they illuminated everything. I tried to move, to escape, but at that moment I realized that my whole body was completely taped up, even my mouth, so I couldn't scream. I turned my eyes around and realized that Victor was next to me in the same condition as me. Among everything I saw, there were torture devices, blood, a table full of surgical elements, and in the background, a corpse. It was the bloody, decapitated corpse of the lady who was before us. The same woman we saw on a monitor, thinking that this would never happen to us. As soon as I saw the corpse, I turned my head quickly to get her away from there. As I turned my head, I found some stairs leading out of this basement. I recognized this house. We were still in Alan's house. Before I could think of much else, the man in black approached us with a huge knife in his hand. In front of us was a camera, and the man made sure not to cover it as he walked. When he reached our side, the man suddenly ran his knife across my neck, grazing it and almost cutting me. When he was done with me, he approached Victor and did the same thing. He was much more frightened than I was and burst into tears the instant the man raised the knife in his direction. Unable to contain himself, Victor became even more desperate and tried to get out of his chair. The man simply ignored him and walked away for a few seconds. When he returned, he showed us a cell phone in his hand. The cell phone had a finalized vote on it. As we watched the cell phone screen, still trying to figure out what it meant, the man walked away for a few seconds and left the phone on the table. Suddenly, he turned around and ran to us at high speed with his knife in his hand. Once he was next to Victor, he stabbed him again and again at high speed. Before we could react, he had already stabbed him more than 10 times, and he didn't seem to be close to stopping. With his mouth covered so he wouldn't scream, Victor cried and cried nonstop. I still remember the worst image. The image that will haunt me until the day I die. The image was not of Victor being stabbed. but his eyes. Before he died, he looked at me. He was still crying. His tear-filled eyes looked at me with confusion. He didn't understand why he was dying. Didn't understand why someone was stabbing him in a basement while other people watched. Those were the eyes of a person who just wanted to be at home, hugging his dog and talking to his friends. They were eyes that wanted to go on living. Suddenly, those eyes went out. Victor was dead. I stared at him in shock until I felt something on my face again. It was the same handkerchief as before, with the same smell. Suddenly, I fell asleep again. When I woke up, I was in the street a few meters away from my house. I got up very dizzy and walked instinctively to my door. My parents hugged me and asked me what had happened to me. A short time later, I felt better and told the police everything. When they went to Alan's house, they found no one. It seems I was asleep for several hours, just enough time for them to grab their stuff and run away. I never heard from them, and the only reason they declared Victor dead was because of my testimony, since no one ever found his body. Today, I live in fear. Since the deep web people chose Victor to die in my place, they could very well be playing a game that includes me being alive for several years and then killing me. Whatever I do, I am afraid. I hardly use the computer or want anything to do with going online. Sometimes I feel like, just like my friend, I died that night. Do you know what I think next? That no one will ever pay for what they did to us. Alan and his parents are probably free, happy, and doing the same to other people.
I've always been careful when exploring the deep web. I know the rules. Never download anything. Never enter chat rooms where people ask for personal information. Never click on links you don't trust. I've followed these rules for years, treating it like a controlled experiment. A dark curiosity, nothing more. My friends knew about my interest and, over time, they convinced me to start making YouTube videos about it. At first, it was just for fun, talking about creepy sites, urban legends, and the weirdest things I'd found. I never showed anything illegal, never went too deep. But my audience kept growing. The more I pushed the limits, the more views I got. And I started to enjoy the thrill of it. That's what led me to that night. The night I went too far. It started like any other recording session. I had OBS open, my mic ready, and my VPN running. A few subscribers had sent me a link, claiming it led to an impossible website, a place you could only visit once. They swore that no one who entered it ever found it again. I didn't believe that, obviously. URLs don't just vanish. But I was intrigued. I clicked the link. At first, the page was empty. Just a black screen. Then, white text faded in. Welcome. The cursor wouldn't move. I tried closing the browser. Nothing happened. My entire screen was frozen. Then, my speakers let out a sharp static burst, and my room suddenly felt wrong. My door creaked. The air felt steel. That's when the real nightmare began. My monitor flickered. I tried to force a shutdown, but my keyboard was unresponsive. The mouse was useless. Even Task Manager wouldn't open. The only thing I could do was stare at the screen as the text changed again. Stay with us. Then, OBS crashed. My webcam light turned on by itself. The reflection in the screen showed my face, pale and tense, but something felt off. I wasn't alone in the reflection. There was someone behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just my dark room. I grabbed my phone to turn on the flashlight, but the battery was dead. That didn't make sense. I had 80% just minutes ago. The lights flickered. My monitor went black, and then a video started playing. It was my webcam feed, but not live. It was a recording of me sitting at my desk, staring blankly ahead. But I wasn't moving. I wasn't blinking. I wasn't breathing. Then the screen distorted, static filling the display. My own face warped and twisted, stretching unnaturally. The audio turned into whispers, low and constant, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. The whispers got louder, rising to an unbearable screech, forcing me to cover my ears. I felt something behind me again, closer this time. The hairs on my neck stood on end. My chair rocked slightly as if someone had just touched it. I didn't want to turn around, but I had to. My breath caught in my throat as I slowly shifted my gaze. The shadows of my room seemed deeper now, darker than they should be. A shape flickered near the doorway, tall, thin, shifting as it struggled to stay in place. It twitched unnaturally, its form glitching like a corrupted video file. It took a step forward and the floor groaned under its weight. The video on my screen looped again, my unmoving face staring right through me. The thing at my door jerked its head towards me, as if acknowledging my presence. My body froze, every instinct screaming at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. My door was shut. The screen pulsed with another message. He sees you. Then the face appeared. It was warped, stretched like a digital glitch, a mouth too wide, eyes sunken but staring directly at me. The screen distorted as it got closer. The audio turned to garbled whispers. Then, in a clear voice, it spoke. Run. I pushed back from my desk. My door rattled violently. The handle twisted on its own. I tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. The walls groaned as if something was pressing against them from the other side. Then the blood started seeping through. Dark streaks oozed down the walls, thick and slow. Faces began to emerge from the stains, stretching, forming hollow expressions. Their mouths opened, soundless, but I could feel their screams inside my head. They weren't just appearing, they were trying to escape. The room seemed to tilt. The air felt heavy, suffocating. I gasped for breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. The screen flashed again, but this time it wasn't just text. It was me, but not me. My reflection was grinning, its head tilting in sharp, unnatural angles. My lips moved, but the voice wasn't mine. You don't belong here. Then the power cut out. My room was swallowed by darkness, but I wasn't alone. I grabbed my chair and slammed it against the door. The wood didn't even crack. My computer screen flashed again. The files on my desktop multiplied, filling every inch of the screen. The same message repeated in each file name. Run, 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 run. One file opened on its own. It was a text document. There is no way out. You are with us now. The walls pulsed, shifting. The faces broke free, their limbs stretching unnaturally as they crawled from the walls. The air was thick with the smell of rot. My head throbbed, my vision blurred. They moved toward me, jerking, twitching, their fingers reaching. The light bulb above me shattered. The darkness swallowed the room. I clawed at the walls, desperate to escape, but my fingers found no purchase. Cold, skeletal hands wrapped around my wrist, pulling me downward. My own screams mixed with theirs, a chorus of suffering filling the room. My screen glowed one last time, flashing a final message before everything went back. Welcome home. I woke up. My head jerked up from my desk. My monitor was normal. The door was fine. No blood, no faces, no whispers. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my hands. A nightmare. It had to be. Maybe I fell asleep mid-recording. I opened OBS to check the footage. Nothing was there. The recording had stopped before I clicked the link. There was no video, no evidence of what happened. I exhaled in relief, leaning back. Then I saw my desktop. The files were still there. A new document had appeared. Its title, just my name. My fingers trembled as I clicked it open. Inside, only one sentence stared back at me. You never left. One file was open, a text document. My stomach clenched as I read the words. Congratulations. You've seen it. You saw hell for a few seconds. That's where you're going when you die. My cursor moved on its own, highlighting the last sentence over and over again. My web light flickered on. Something behind me let out a slow, rasping breath. I didn't turn around.
I was supposed to be boxing up my uncle's things. Nothing special, just old tools, some dusty books, and half-rotted junk in his garage. He died 2 months earlier. Everyone said suicide, hung himself in the basement. But even then, I didn't believe it. Not with the bruises they'd ignored. Not with the way the lock on the inside of the door was shattered. I found the USB drive taped under the bottom drawer of his old workbench. Black, no markings. Nothing else in that drawer but dead spiders and rusty screws. I put it in my pocket without thinking. It felt out of place, like someone wanted it hidden, but not destroyed, like it was waiting. That night I was alone. My mom was passed out on the couch. I plugged it into my laptop in my room. Only one file. Cipherdoor.exe. The icon was blank. Just a red dot in the center. I double-clicked. It launched a browser window that didn't look like any browser I'd ever seen. No URL bar, no controls, just a login screen and a single clickable link under it. Recover account. No text field, no buttons, just that one option pulsing softly like it was breathing. I stared at it for a full minute. There was no back button, no way to close the window. Not even a task manager could kill the process. The cursor stayed locked to the window. I didn't click because I wanted to. I clicked because it felt like I had to. The second I did, my phone rang. Unknown number. No ringtone, just loud static. I froze, but answered. "Welcome back, Jonah." The voice was calm, steady, but wrong. It sounded like someone talking through a translator, slightly off, like each word was stitched from 100 voices. "It's time, friend." I didn't say anything. My mouth went dry. They knew exactly where I was. Before I could hang up, the call ended. My hands were shaking when I looked back at the screen. It wasn't a login page anymore. It had opened into a full dashboard, black background, blood-red text. No usernames, no icons, just rows of threads with labels like coordinates, dates, and timestamps. The kind of things you'd expect on surveillance software, not a forum. Each entry had a link. Most said video active. I clicked on one. A dim room. A man tied to a chair, screaming into a cloth gag. For 30 seconds he struggled. Then someone walked into frame and turned off the light. Window instantly. The top of the page updated in real time. My IP address appeared in red. Account restored, session active. I hadn't typed anything, but it knew I was there. I scrolled down. There were folders titled Contributions, Witnessed Events, Legacy Access. The last folder had 5 items, all of them tagged Exit Attempt Failure. I clicked the 4th one. The video opened fast, no loading. My uncle's face filled the screen. His hands were zip-tied. His eyes were wide and bloodshot. He was whispering something like a prayer. Then a figure stepped into view dressed in black, wearing a mask like a smooth oval. No mouth, no eyes, just a slit running vertically down the center. The figure raised a syringe. The video cut off just as it touched his neck. A new thread appeared instantly, time-stamped for that exact moment. Viewer, Jonah R. logged. That's when I knew I wasn't just watching. I was part of it now. The feed flickered, and for a second my webcam light turned on. I didn't even think. I slammed my laptop shut, but I knew it was too late. I didn't sleep that night. Every few minutes I thought I heard tapping on my window, but when I checked, there was nothing there. My phone stayed on airplane mode, but at exactly 3:11 a.m., it lit up. No number again, just one notification. Live post created. Jonah R. Feed active. The message came with a link. Against every instinct, I clicked it. My webcam turned on instantly. There was no time to react, no settings, no confirmation. It streamed me directly to the site. I was the post. I unplugged the laptop, tore out the battery, but the screen stayed on. My face was still there. In the corner, a timer was counting down. It was at 000958. And underneath, session lock, final. That's when the whispering started. Not from the laptop, from inside the room. It was low at first, like someone trying to speak through water. I checked the closet. Empty. Then under the bed. Nothing. I stood up and the lights went out. The screen glowed brighter in the dark, my own face staring back at me. But it wasn't a sync anymore. The feed was lagging. My mouth didn't move, but the reflection did. It smiled. Then the whispering stopped. There was someone in the house. I heard the back door unlock. Not break, unlock, like someone already had a key. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a broken desk lamp, and backed into the hallway. I heard footsteps, not heavy, just the sound of bare feet dragging slightly across wood. Slow, deliberate. I crept down the stairs, trying not to breathe too loud, but every creak of the wood echoed like a scream. When I reached the bottom, the kitchen lights were flickering. That's when I saw him. The same figure from the video. The mask with the slit. Only now it moved. The slit twitched open. A wet, gurgling breath slipped out. He didn't run. He didn't even lunge. He just started walking toward me, step by step, the slit in his face expanding into a jagged hole. Inside, something twitched like tongues or fingers. I ran. I didn't care where. I bolted through the living room, slammed the door to the basement, and threw a shelf in front of it. I was panting, barely thinking. That's when I looked up and saw the screen. My uncle's old computer was still on. The same browser. The same site. But this time the thread title was different. Replacement confirmed. The screen showed a split feed. On one side, my uncle was tied to a chair. On the other, my own hallway. Live. The figure was already on the stairs. I tried to break the basement window. The figure was at the door now, slowly moving the shelf aside with inhuman calm. Not brute force, just patience. It had done this 100 times. I grabbed a crowbar and stood back. The second the door opened, I swung. It hit his arm, but he didn't react. His fingers latched onto the bar and pulled it from my hands like I was a child. He tilted his head once, then raised the needle. I didn't feel the needle. I just remember the cold metal against my neck and the way the world snapped sideways. But I didn't pass out. I panicked. I threw my weight forward, slammed past him, and crashed through the basement window. The glass tore my shoulder open. I landed hard on the concrete outside. My leg bent wrong. I screamed and crawled. He followed. Didn't rush, just climbed out through the broken window like it wasn't a problem. I dragged myself through the glass, covered in blood and glass, screaming for help. He didn't speak, didn't run, just walked after me. When I looked back, the slit in the mask was wide open. Something inside it was moving, shifting like fingers and tongues pushing against the edges. I made it to the front yard before he stopped. He just stood there on the lawn, head tilted like a confused animal. Then he turned around and walked back into the house. Calm, silent, like he'd finished his part. A second later, the lights in the house all shut off at once. The cops showed up 5 minutes later. My neighbor must have heard me. They found the man inside, still sitting in the basement. Said he was drugged out of his mind, barely breathing. No ID, no explanation. The report said, home invasion. No mention of the mask, no mention of the live stream. My laptop was gone. Since then, people show up outside my house. Different ones every time. Just standing there, staring. They never come in. They don't talk, but they move things. I wake up and furniture is flipped, drawers are emptied, doors unlocked. Sometimes they leave items. A shoe on the kitchen counter, a photo from my childhood, a blood-stained fork. It's not about killing me. It's about showing me that I can't stop them. That I'm not safe anywhere. They did the same thing to my uncle, and no one believed him either. They don't need to break in. They already have keys. My name is Henry, and since my wife passed away, I spend too many nights awake without anything to do. My daughter, Sophia, is now a teenager and spends all her time in her room or with her friends. So when the house gets quiet, I fall into the same routine. I know it's not right, but it was my guilty pleasure. It became part of my life before I even noticed. I didn't expect it to turn into something dangerous. It all began when I found a dark web page some months ago. It had no design, just a list of links with strange codes. When I clicked one, it showed a live feed of a grocery store. Another was a parking lot. Another was someone's kitchen. All private cameras that should not be online. I kept returning because it was the only thing that distracted me when the nights got long. I didn't do it because I felt it was important. I did it because I felt nothing. One night started just like the others. I turned on the computer, put on the headphones, and opened the same page I always checked. I thought it would be another quiet night of watching people who didn't know I existed. I had no idea I was about to see something that would break every sense of safety I had left. The site had a new section called Street Index. It looked like a random collection of neighborhoods, each with feeds from different angles. I clicked through a few out of simple curiosity. Most of them were empty sidewalks and parked cars. Then, one of the streets stopped me cold. I didn't move for a few seconds because I recognized the layout. The same slope, the same fence at the corner. It was my street. I clicked the next link under that address. It switched to a view from across the road, pointing directly at my house. I stared at the front door on the screen and then looked at it in real life. The angle was identical to someone standing on the sidewalk and recording without being seen. I checked my window to make sure no one was out there, but it was too dark to see anything. There was another link under the same section. Hallway Night. I hovered over it for a moment because something in my chest tightened in a way I couldn't ignore. I clicked anyway. The feed opened after 1 second of static, and I felt panic. I was looking at the upstairs hallway inside my own home. The camera pointed towards Sophie's room. The timestamp was live. My hands started shaking in a way I couldn't hide from myself. I sat in that chair trying to understand how someone could record the inside of my house without me noticing. I didn't have any cameras there. Nothing made sense, and the fear didn't give me time to think straight. Everything felt too real. I walked upstairs slowly because I didn't know if someone was inside the house. Every sound made me stop for a second. When I reached the hallway, everything looked normal. Sophie's door was closed. The carpet was untouched. I checked the walls, the lamps, the corners near the ceiling. I didn't find any device. I wanted to believe the video was old, but the timestamp on the screen didn't stop. The next morning, I tried to make it sound like a normal conversation with Sophie. even though my voice kept shaking in ways I couldn't control. "Did you leave your phone camera on at night?" "No." "Then stop using the phone so late. Just put it away." "Why are you acting weird?" I didn't know how to answer without scaring her, so I ended the talk before she pushed more. The moment she left for school, I tore apart every device we owned. I smashed the laptops. I broke the tablets. I took apart the old phones we kept in a drawer. The fear felt like a weight I couldn't get off my chest. I didn't want any camera inside my home again. That night I tried to sleep, but my nerves kept waking me up every few minutes. I felt watched, even with the lights off and the electronics destroyed. I couldn't shut off the idea that the feed might still be active somewhere. Around 2 a.m., my phone vibrated. It was a text message from a private number. It had a link and one sentence telling me to open it. I stared at the screen for almost a full minute because I didn't want to touch it. My hands were sweating and my breathing got fast again. But fear has a way of pushing you toward things you don't want to face. I clicked. A page opened with my daughter's full name at the top, her school, her favorite food, her online accounts, places she visited often. There were folders filled with information that no one should have access to. At the bottom was one folder marked Home Alone Files. I pressed it, even though my whole body was tense. There were many videos inside, all recent, all taken without her knowing. One showed her brushing her hair after school. Another had her laughing on the phone. When I thought things couldn't get any worse, I saw it. It was a folder titled Bed View. I froze, terrified of what I was going to find. I opened the folder. There were hundreds of videos of Sophie sleeping, taken from inside the room. And there was another one with the camera placed close to her face. I paused it because I felt dizzy, like my chest was closing in. A new text appeared. "You watched people. Now it's your turn." My vision blurred for a moment. I wiped my eyes and kept staring at the message. Nothing about this felt like something I could control anymore. I stayed awake until morning because I couldn't risk closing my eyes. The next day, I searched her room again. I moved every piece of furniture. I checked every vent. I ran my hands across the walls looking for holes or lenses. I didn't care if I destroyed everything. Sophie stood in the doorway asking what I was doing, and I couldn't give her a real answer. I kept pulling things apart because the fear had already taken over every thought I had. Then, my phone vibrated again. "Stop searching." I felt nauseous as more texts appeared, one after another. "We told you to stop. You broke your devices. We added ours. You wanted to watch. Now watch yourself lose control." I dropped the phone. Every corner of the house felt unsafe. I kept waiting for another message. "Look outside." I didn't want to go near the window. I took a few slow steps because I felt like someone was watching from the dark. When I finally looked, a car was parked across the street, with its lights off. A small blinking light flashed inside, slow and steady like a device recording. Another message came. "Last warning. You took from others. Now we take from you. This does not end." The car engine started. The taillights turned red. It drove away slowly, as if whoever was inside wasn't worried about being followed. I didn't move from the window for a long time. I couldn't decide if I should keep watching or hide. The messages stopped, but the damage was already done. Weeks have passed and the fear hasn't faded. I haven't slept a full night. Every small sound makes me walk through the hallway to check on Sophie. I keep the windows locked and the curtains closed. I don't touch anything with a camera. I don't want to see anything. I don't want anyone to see us. Sometimes late at night, I think I see a blinking light far down the street. I don't know if it's real or if I'm too scared to trust what I see. But I know one thing with certainty. Someone out there has videos of my home, my daughter, our private life. Someone watched us while we slept. Someone felt entitled to do it because I watched strangers first.
I believe that one of the greatest forms of love on earth is the love one has for one's child. I'm pretty sure that every parent knows this, as most parents won't think twice about doing anything for their children. But when push comes to shove, I don't know how far many parents will be willing to go for their children. And while I don't wish this ghastly scenario you're about to hear on any parent, on the 17th of May 2017, I realized just how far I was willing to go for my son Richardson, as the love I have for him put me through the most morbid experience I have ever gone through in my life. To understand why I went through this experience, I'll have to take you 8 years back to the year 2015, the worst year of my life. It all started in the month of January. I had just received some painful news as I was told that my 19-year-old son, Richardson, had failing kidneys. The news came as a shock as I knew my son, Richardson, wasn't a heavy drinker. I remember asking the doctors with tears in my eyes how and why this happened, and as usual, they just told me that it was one of those things. I remember breaking down in the hospital as my boy at the age of 19 was just about to start living his life, and this unfortunate situation had put an immediate stop to it. I managed to put myself together that day as I frantically asked the doctors for possible solutions. I remember them telling me that at this stage, a kidney donation would be my best bet. So I immediately offered up myself as a candidate. But after being tested, I was told that I wasn't a suitable candidate. In their own words, a kidney donor must have a compatible blood type with the recipient, and my son Richardson had an O blood type, similar to his mother's, and it was completely different from mine. The news crushed me as I had lost Richardson's mother during his birth, and he was the only one I had left. With my possible donation out of the way, I was told my next option was to add Richardson's name to the kidney donation waiting list. And even if the doctors didn't tell me, I knew that was already a lost cause, as most people wait 5 to 7 years, and we didn't have that time. With no other viable options, my son started to go through endless kidney dialysis sessions, and I had no other choice but to watch and hope that things would get better. The year 2015 soon came to an end, and it looked like there was no possible solution in sight. I remember taking matters into my own hands as I looked for solutions everywhere I could throughout 2016. I reached out to friends and extended family members. I called numerous other doctors and asked for second and third options, but at the end of it all my efforts were to no avail. I wasn't really a religious man at this point in my life, but I remember calling out to a higher power to help me in my time of need. And while I still didn't get a solution to help my dying son, strangely enough, just when I had lost all hope, the popular social media platform called Facebook would bring the solution I so desperately needed the very next year. I'm pretty sure everyone listening to this knows about the popular social media platform called Facebook. And since it was a massive social media tool, it was one of the many platforms I had used to get the word out there on my son's condition. I had actually made a post on the platform asking people if they knew any willing donor with an O blood type early in the year 2016, and it wasn't till the 12th of April 2017 that I finally got a viable answer. I had gotten a strange message on the Facebook platform from someone who had viewed the post, and he told me that there was a man on the Facebook marketplace who was willing to help me out. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Facebook marketplace was a service that had just recently launched in the year 2016. I remember being very confused as I wondered if this was a joke or if the person was actually being serious, but since it was my only feasible option, I went through with it. I eventually got in contact with the man on Facebook Marketplace, and his name was Mr. Ernie Green. After talking for a while, Ernie told me that he had type O blood and he was willing to donate. I then asked what his price was, as I knew he wasn't going to donate his kidney for free, But Ernie sent me a message that read,
The price really doesn't matter, Mr. Kenneth, but I will, however, require you to carry out a particular service for me. I would go on to explain the requirements of this service, but the details are too sensitive to be texted over the phone, so I'll give you an address where you can meet and talk more about this in person.
I was shocked by Mr. Ernie's message, as I knew very well that something wasn't right. I had already done endless research ever since my son got this illness, and I knew illegally buying a human kidney from a willing donor would cost me anywhere from $50,000 to $160,000, as the prices were never really fixed. I also knew that since my son had O blood type, the potential price of the kidney would increase as most potential donors with this blood type sold their kidneys for around $262,000. Now, I knew full well while doing my research that I didn't have anything close to these absurd amounts in my bank account, but I was willing to do anything, whether it was borrowing from my friends and family or selling everything that I had to raise the money for my child once I found a potential donor. Which is why seeing Mr. Ernie's price, free proposal after all this, felt too good to be true. It wasn't long before Mr. Ernie sent me the address where we would meet on the 17th of May, 2017. As the fateful day of my meeting with Mr. Ernie inched closer, I found myself getting more and more anxious as I wondered what the service he wanted me to do for him was. I hadn't told anyone about the meeting, not even my son Richardson, as Mr. Ernie said if I wanted to get the kidney for my son, I should speak the details of our meeting to no one. But just to be on the safe side, I told my best friend Christopher Hands about it, as I trusted that man with my life. Christopher wasn't too keen on the entire ordeal, as he also felt something was off about this. I remember him telling me, I don't know, Kenneth, but this entire thing sounds wrong. I mean, how are you so sure this Eric guy is telling the truth? He might be a kidnapper or human trafficker who's trying to lure you in. Don't get me wrong, I know how dire things are, but you really aren't thinking straight, Kenneth, because even if this guy Eric is telling the truth, you and I both know that buying or doing any sort of service for this man's kidney is illegal. I knew everything Chris told me was the truth, but I also knew I had no choice, so I responded with, You think I don't know that, Chris? I've probably thought about everything you just said numerous times before, but what choice do I have? My boy is dying in the hospital, and I have done nothing but sit and watch him for 2 years. I can't keep waiting on a damn kidney donation waiting list because we don't have that time, Chris. And while I'm grateful for all the help you have given me and my son during these trying times, this is something I have to do. I know it's illegal and dangerous, but it's the only option I have to save my son, and I love him too much to let it pass me by. Christopher knew I wasn't going to change my mind, so he told me he'd support me. He also offered to go with me, but I told him that I was instructed to go alone. I then told him to promise me that if anything did happen to me, he'd take care of my son Richardson, and he assured me that he would. Christopher's assurance gave me peace of mind as I was now ready to face whatever it was that I was supposed to do on that fateful day. The 17th of May finally arrived, and I went to the address where I was supposed to meet Mr. Ernie. I was picked up by a couple of men, and I was driven to a warehouse-like building. I was then ushered into a room where I saw Mr. Ernie and 2 other hooded figures. Before anything was said, I knew I had gotten myself into something really wrong, as I noticed the 2 hooded men were holding both cameras and film equipment. Mr. Ernie then walked up to me and said, Hello, Mr. Kenneth. It's nice to finally meet you. I wasn't ready to exchange pleasantries, so I bluntly responded with, What do you need me to do? Mr. Ernie then smiled as he said, That's great. I like a direct man that goes straight to business. So I'll tell you what you want to know. I'm sure you're already wondering what astronomical price I'm going to call for the donation of my kidney, but you can rest assured that I'm not going to take your life savings for the donation of my kidney. As a matter of fact, what I need you to do for it is pretty simple. Mr. Ernie, who now had a sadistic smile on his face, then picked up a small medical blade as he continued with, All I need you to do is cut it out of me. I was completely baffled now, as it took my mind a couple of minutes to comprehend what Mr. Ernie had just said. 1,000 questions ran through my mind, but the first thing I said was, Are you going to film this? Mr. Ernie then responded with, Of course, Mr. Kenneth. You see,
We are a niche group of artistic filmmakers, and this is our genre. Some might call what we do snuff films, but I believe what we make is true art. We usually film videos that contain infliction or self-infliction of pain, but we always take it up a notch as we sometimes carry out mock surgeries with real individuals like myself, without anesthesia. And the best part is that these so-called surgeries are carried out by everyday people like you, which makes it so much better as you have no idea what you're doing. My mind was trying to comprehend all the information being thrown at me, but I managed to stay calm as I stuttered out the words. I'm not saying I have agreed to do any of this madness, but even if I did, the kidney that you have promised me might be damaged in this unethical process. Mr. Ernie then said, I understand your concern, Mr. Kenneth, but you have my word that once you cut me open on camera, a fully functional and capable kidney will be shipped to the hospital your son is staying at. I know all of this is a lot to take in, but if I were you, I'd take this deal as it is a pretty good bargain. It was a really horrifying experience, seeing this man liking the act of cutting out his kidney to getting a bargain at the local Walmart. It was a pretty disturbing thing to consider, but I told myself that I had already come this far. Don't get me wrong, I was scared shitless, but it was either this or watching my son die, and he was all I had, so I stuttered the words, I'll do it. I saw a sick smile on Mr. Ernie's face as he said, That's great, Kenneth. I knew you wouldn't let me down. Your son would be proud, and to make things easier, you don't need to worry about your identity because your face will be blurred in the final cut. Mr. Ernie then took off his clothes, and the sight of his bare body was ghastly. He had numerous scars all over his upper body, and the little prosthetics on his feet meant that he was missing some of his toes. Then they handed me the blade as they drew out the surgical lines on Mr. Ernie's body, and when they were done, they told me to begin. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. My hands were shaking vigorously now, and my heart was beating fast, but I knew it was now or never, so I took the blade and I started cutting. Mr. Ernie's screams filled the room as the blade came in contact with his skin. I could tell that these weren't screams of pain, but of joy and pleasure, as I could see he was getting aroused by this. Ernie's blood started to pour everywhere now as I made my way across the dotted outline. I knew he could die from this massive blood loss, so I stuttered the words, He's losing a lot of blood. Should I stop? But I was told to keep going. My vision was blurry now, and I couldn't feel my hands anymore. I didn't know if I could keep going at this point, and for a split second, I had a moment of enlightenment as I asked myself what my son Richardson would say if he saw me doing this morbid act. I knew then and there that he wouldn't like it if I continued to carry out this ghastly act, even if it was to save his life. So halfway through the dotted lines, I stopped. Ernie, who was somehow still conscious after all that, asked, Why did you stop? And I stuttered the words, I'm sorry, but I can't keep doing this. I could see rage fill his eyes as he stood up and said, I thought you were a man of business, Kenneth, not a weak and pathetic man. You really can't bitch out now, so come here and finish cutting me open. I then firmly said, No, I said I can't. Ernie then proceeded to repeatedly scream the words, Cut me open! Cut me open! Cut me open! His words reverberated through my very soul like a sick chant, but I wasn't going to agree. Seeing I wasn't going to do what he wanted, Ernie then looked me dead in the eyes as he said, I really didn't want another one of our films to end like this. But since you have decided not to man up, I'll show you how to do it by cutting you open. I tried to run, but I was quickly subdued. I struggled as they forced me to the bloody table Ernie was lying on. I knew that I put myself in this situation, so there was no one I could blame but myself. I accepted my fate as they held me down and raised the blade, but right before it could reach my skin, the sound of police sirens filled the entire room. I watched the two cameramen and the other hooded figures all run in fear as Ernie screamed, You called the cops? It wasn't long after that, the door was knocked on, and we heard the words,
It's the police. We have you surrounded.
Ernie, who was still bleeding, then pressed the knife to my neck as the door was broken down. As the cops entered the room, they pointed their guns at Ernie as they said, "Let him go, sir." Ernie, who was now crying, started shouting the words, "Why can't people just leave us to make our art in peace? We are an evolved form of artists who have discovered the beauty of art through pain and death, so why can't you just let us express ourselves?" The cops, who had no idea what Ernie was saying, responded with, "The best thing for you to do is to let your hostage go, so please drop the knife." Ernie had now realized that there were no other options for him, so he mumbled the words, "I will open your eyes to see the beautiful art in death, even if it's the last thing I do." And with that, Ernie threw me to the floor and lunged at the cops. Ernie was shot 6 times, and I remember his corpse falling to the floor with a smile on its face. After the demise of Ernie, the entire warehouse was raided by the police. Numerous hard drives filled with morbid snuff films containing scenes of brutal murders, self-amputations, ghastly mock surgeries without anesthesia, and aggressive self-harm were found and confiscated. It was also revealed that Ernie was an alias and that the man's real name was Ronald Duffer. He was a man that was formerly hospitalized after having numerous records of continuous self-harm. Apparently, he had managed to escape from where he was being kept, and he hadn't been found since. It was also revealed that he had been diagnosed with a rare form of extreme sexual sadism disorder that they called advanced voyeuristic sexual sadism, which was what led him to start making these snuff films and selling them for high prices to people who enjoyed the same sexual depravities. I'm pretty sure that I would have died that day, but the cops told me that they had received a call earlier from a man called Christopher Hands, and he told them that his friend was terrified and about to do something stupid at this address. So they rushed down to the scene. I cried after they told me that, as I thanked Christopher under my breath. After I had answered all their questions and the investigations were through, the cops let me go. I remember the first thing I did after that was to rush to the hospital and hug my son. I knew I had potentially lost the last opportunity I had to save my son, but I knew he wouldn't have wanted me to kill a man and become a murderer just to save his life. The doctors told us that with dialysis, the life expectancy is 5 to 10 years. But my son died on the 2nd of February, 2019. These 4 years without him have been extremely hard, but I've learned to live with the pain. I sometimes beat myself up, as I usually wonder if I should have just done what Ronald Duffer wanted me to do and cut him open. But then I reminded myself that my son Richardson wouldn't have wanted that. On some days, I also wish I had spent more time with him during the time I wasted running around associating with psychopaths who made snuff films. I could go on and on about my regrets, but the one thing I don't regret was deleting the social media app called Facebook. Because while I thought it had given me the solution I was looking for, at the end of it all, it just gave me much more problems. I now know that many of the people behind the messages we receive on social media platforms aren't who we think they are. I know for a fact that there are potentially thousands of people like Ronald Duffer still on the platform now, and any one of you hearing this could be talking to one of them.
I met Laura 2 years ago. It ended like most things that start too fast. Broken glass, blocked numbers, and that stupid silence that makes you check your phone every 2 minutes. We didn't talk for months, and when we finally did, it was just to argue. I thought I was done with her until she showed up at my job one day, drunk and crying. I ignored her. That was the last time I saw her in person. By then, I'd started seeing someone new, Megan. She wasn't perfect, but she was good for me. Simple, kind, didn't play games. Laura didn't take that well. She started calling again, sending messages from fake numbers. Stuff like, "You'll regret this," and "She's not better than me." I didn't answer. I thought it would stop. It didn't. 3 weeks later, I noticed someone watching my building from across the street. Always at night, hoodie up, phone in hand. I told myself it was nothing, probably someone waiting for a ride. But when I saw him 2 nights in a row standing in the same spot facing my window, it stopped feeling random. I didn't tell Megan at first. I didn't want her to think I was paranoid. But one night she left my apartment around 10, and 15 minutes later, she called me crying. Someone had followed her car for 3 blocks. She couldn't see who it was, just the shape of a man in the driver's seat behind her. When she turned suddenly into a gas station, the car kept going. That night, I went to check the street camera in front of my building. The guy was there again, same hoodie, same stance. He never moved, like he was waiting for something to happen. I reported it to the police. They didn't care. No direct threat, no action. Megan begged me to install cameras inside my apartment. I bought a couple the next morning and set them up in the living room and hallway. Things calmed down for about a week. Then Megan stopped answering my texts. I found out what happened 2 days later. Her neighbor told me there were police outside her building early that morning. Megan had been found dead inside her car, parked behind her complex. The cause wasn't public at first, but when the report came out, it said she was stabbed multiple times. No sign of robbery. No defensive wounds either. I didn't go to the funeral. I couldn't. The idea that she was killed because of me made me sick. I couldn't sleep. I started rewatching the security footage from my apartment, going through every night, every frame. I found something on the night she died. At 2:14 a.m., my hallway camera caught someone trying my front door. He didn't break in, just tested the handle. He leaned close to the door for a few seconds, breathing hard. You could hear it on the mic. Then he turned and walked away. I froze the frame and zoomed in. Same hoodie. After that, I barely left the apartment. I covered the windows, locked the doors twice. Every noise made me jump. Every car outside sounded like him. I wanted to believe Laura wasn't involved, but I couldn't. The timing, the messages, the stalking, it all lined up. One night I woke up to a noise coming from the kitchen. Something metallic. I sat up and listened. Another sound. A drawer sliding open. I reached for my phone and turned on the camera feed. The screen showed the kitchen empty. Then a shadow crossed the frame, tall, broad, moving fast. The screen froze for a second, glitched, then went black. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept near the bed and crept toward the door. The floor creaked under my feet. The hallway light was off. When I reached the kitchen, the fridge door was open. Food on the floor. The window above the sink was half open. I turned to leave, and that's when he came out of the dark. He grabbed the bat mid-swing and slammed it against the counter. I felt something snap in my wrist. The sound it made didn't seem real. He shoved me back hard, knocking me into the wall. His face was covered by a ski mask. He didn't say a word, just breathing, deep, violent. He stepped closer and pulled out a knife. Long, jagged, dirty. I tried to kick him, but he caught my leg and twisted it. Pain shot up my side and I screamed. He dragged me by the leg into the living room. My body hit the floor hard and I could barely breathe. My right ankle was twisted, my hand crushed under his boot when I tried to push myself up. He didn't say a word. He just watched me from behind that mask, breathing steady like he was in control of every second. He knelt beside me and tore my shirt open with the knife. The metal felt cold against my back. I tried to crawl forward, but he pinned me with his knee. I felt the blade touch my skin and then it moved. Slow, deliberate. The pain was sharp, immediate, like fire spreading under the flesh. At first I thought he was cutting me at random, just enjoying it, but after a few seconds I realized he was forming letters. Each stroke was a word being written in blood. The sound of the knife scratching against bone made me want to pass out. When he finished, he leaned close to my ear and whispered one word. Laura. He stood up and left me there bleeding and shaking. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. I could feel the blood soaking into the carpet, the air heavy with the smell of iron. I blacked out before I heard the door close. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Everything was white and humming, the light too bright to handle. My arm and leg were bandaged, my fingers in a cast. A nurse told me I'd been found by a neighbor who heard me screaming through the walls. I was lucky, she said. I didn't feel lucky. They said my back had deep lacerations, but no permanent nerve damage. The doctor told me I shouldn't look at it yet. I waited until I was alone, then pulled the blanket down and grabbed a mirror. The word was carved across my upper back in thick, uneven letters. Laura. The skin around it was swollen, the stitches black and ugly. Seeing it made me nauseous. The bastard had branded me like a message or a claim. I couldn't stop shaking. I knew exactly who had sent him. I told the police everything. The threats, the stalking, the break-in, Megan's murder. They said they'd look into Laura. That night an officer came back. His face said it all before he spoke. They'd found her dead in her apartment. Laura was lying in her living room, throat cut, blood everywhere. No forced entry, no robbery. The neighbors said she'd been asking everyone for money the week before. She told someone else she owed a guy and didn't have enough to pay him. The cops assumed it was a deal gone wrong. I knew better.
I am telling this because keeping it inside is worse than saying it out loud. My name is not important, but my son's name was Eddie. And he was 10 years old when this happened. He was curious, stubborn, and always distracted by animals, especially dogs. That day, we went shopping after school to buy shoes and a jacket. Nothing special, just another routine afternoon. The shopping area was busy but normal, with people walking fast and cars stopping and starting near the sidewalks. Eddie stayed close to me at first, walking beside the cart, asking questions I barely answered because I was tired and focused on finishing quickly. I remember checking prices and thinking about dinner, not paying enough attention to anything else. Near the parking lot entrance, Eddie stopped walking. A stray dog was sitting near a trash bin, calm and quiet with dirty fur and soft eyes. The dog looked friendly, but what caught my attention was how he was watching Eddie. The dog stood up slowly and took 2 steps closer, close enough that I could see its eyes clearly. They were too focused, fixed on Eddie without blinking. The dog did not bark, did not move its head, and did not react to the noise around us. Eddie crouched and smiled, already asking if we could take it home. I told him no right away and pulled the cart forward. I said it was not safe and that we did not have time. He followed me slowly, turning around to look at the dog again, and I did not stop to make sure he was still right behind me. As we moved forward, I looked back once. The dog had not followed us, but it had turned its head and was still staring in our direction, completely still as if waiting. Inside the store, everything felt normal for a few minutes. I stood in line, paid for the shoes, and listened to the cashier talk about discounts I did not care about. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it because I wanted to leave. When I turned around to tell Eddie we were done, he was not there. At first, I thought he had stepped a few feet away, maybe to look at toys or displays near the entrance. I called his name in a normal voice and waited. Nothing happened. I walked toward the door and looked outside, expecting to see him standing near the car or the sidewalk. He was nowhere. My breathing started to change as I walked faster, calling his name louder, checking every corner he could have reached. I asked employees if they had seen a boy in a blue hoodie. They all shook their heads. The noise around me grew louder, and my hands started shaking as I realized too much time had passed. At the edge of the park, I saw the narrow alley between 2 buildings. It led away from the street, dark, even during the afternoon. I did not want to go there, but my body moved before I could stop it. Before stepping into the alley, I stopped and listened, trying to hear anything familiar, but there were no voices and no footsteps coming from inside. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat, and my hands were wet with sweat as I took a step forward. A few meters in, I saw one of Eddie's sneakers lying on the ground. It was on its side, still tied, not thrown, not crushed. My stomach dropped and my legs felt weak as I picked it up. The shoe was warm, and that detail made my chest tighten because it meant he had been there moments before. From that moment, fear took control. My thoughts became loud and messy, and I could not slow them down. I started calling his name over and over, louder each time, my voice breaking as I moved deeper into the alley without thinking about danger. At the end of the alley, something was moving. At first, my mind tried to force the image into something familiar, and I recognized the same color of the dog, the same shape of the head, and the same bent ear. The dog stood up, taller than any person. Its body twisted and wrong with legs bent backwards and shoulders in a way no dog should. The creature turned toward me and I saw the same eyes I had seen earlier, unchanged, fixed and focused. Its mouth was wider now, its teeth wrong, chewing slowly with blood running down its chin. I froze because my body refused to move, and fear became heavy and sharp, pressing down on me until breathing felt like work. The thing turned toward me, chewing slowly, blood covering its mouth, not rushing, not hiding. Before it moved, my vision blurred, and my ears rang as panic took full control. I recognized the fur, the color, and the shape of the head, and that realization hit me harder than fear itself. This was the same dog my son had touched minutes earlier, the same one that had waited quietly near the trash bin. My body reacted late because part of my brain still tried to reject what my eyes were seeing. The creature suddenly rushed forward, faster than I expected, its movements heavy and certain like it already knew I could not stop it. As it closed the distance, I saw its face clearly, stretched and wrong, but with the same fixed eyes that had stared at Eddie in the parking lot. I felt a sharp, tearing pain as its claws ripped into my forearm, pulling skin and flesh apart with force, and the impact sent me crashing hard against the wall. I fell to the ground screaming, pressing my back against the cold surface, watching it pass me instead of finishing the attack. As it moved away, it spat something onto the ground near my feet. It was a small plastic dinosaur, dirty and wet, one I recognized instantly, and that moment broke something inside me because there was no doubt left about what it had done. My body shook uncontrollably as blood soaked through my sleeve and my arm burned and throbbed with every heartbeat. I tried to stand and failed, my legs refusing to support my weight. I dragged myself forward using one arm, crying loudly, calling Eddie's name again and again, even though I already knew there would be no answer. The creature ran toward the street, dropping to all fours as it moved, its steps louder and heavy, moving exactly like the animal it had pretended to be before. I heard distant screams and sudden car horns as it disappeared, leaving me bleeding and broken in the alley, unable to follow and unable to look away from what it had left behind. Before the ambulance arrived, I sat on the curb shaking violently, unable to stop crying or focus on the voices around me. My arm was wrapped in cloth, but blood kept seeping through, and every movement sent pain through my body. The police asked questions while the medics worked, speaking quickly and calmly as if this was normal. I tried to explain what I saw, struggling to find words, my voice weak and uneven. When I described the creature, their expressions changed, and they stopped writing. They searched the alley and found blood. Too much to explain, but they did not find Eddie. The word missing followed every report, every call, every update. No one said dead, but no one said alive either. Days turned into weeks filled with interviews, searches, and posters. I replayed every second in my head, blaming myself for looking away, for saying no to the dog without holding his hand, for not noticing sooner that he was gone. At night, my arm ached, and the scar pulled and burned for no reason. Sleep became short and shallow, filled with images I could not escape. Eddie was declared missing, not dead, and that word follows me everywhere I go. I moved away and changed everything I could, but nothing feels safe anymore. I avoid dogs. I can't look at their eyes, and I watch children closely, even when they are not mine.
Carol and I wanted to go on a weekend getaway, somewhere quiet. We were driving on a rural highway late at night. I was tired, but I didn't say it out loud. Carol had been looking forward to this trip for months, and I didn't want to ruin it before it even started. The road was narrow with no lights, no houses, and no signs for miles. Just asphalt, fields, and darkness. The engine noise was steady, but every bump made me grip the wheel harder. Carol leaned back in her seat, scrolling through photos she had saved for the trip, talking about places we'd stop at. I answered when I had to, but my attention stayed on the road. We hadn't seen another car in a long time. That alone made me uneasy, even if I didn't fully admit it to myself. There's something about being completely alone on a road that makes every decision feel heavier. Stopping, speeding up, even changing lanes feels like it matters more than usual. And that's when the headlights caught a small figure on the side of the road. At first, I thought it was an animal. My foot eased off the gas without me thinking about it. As we got closer, the shape didn't move away. It stood upright, too still, right at the edge of the asphalt. Carol leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. It was a child. A boy, alone, barefoot, wearing clothes that didn't match the cold air. He didn't wave or step back. He just watched the car approach, his arms hanging straight down like he was waiting for something to happen. Before stopping, there was a long second where neither of us spoke. I felt my chest tighten and my hands started to sweat on the steering wheel. Every instinct told me this was a bad idea, but I ignored it because the alternative felt worse. I pulled over. The boy climbed into the back seat without hesitation. He didn't ask if it was okay. He didn't say thank you. He sat straight, his hands on his knees, his eyes fixed forward. When he spoke, his voice was flat and slow, like he was repeating words he had learned recently. He said his mom was coming. The silence after that felt wrong. Not quiet in a peaceful way, but heavy, like we were all holding our breath. I checked the mirror again and again. The boy's eyes never left me. He didn't blink. Not once. My skin started to crawl, and I felt my heart picking up speed. Carol tried to talk to him, asking him where he came from and where his mom was. His answers were short and off. He didn't explain anything. He didn't react the way kids usually do. No fear, no confusion, no emotion at all. Just words, spaced out, carefully placed. Before anything happened, there was a stretch of road that felt endless. The darkness ahead seemed thicker, even though nothing had changed. I realized I was holding my breath and forced myself to breathe again. My hands were shaking now, and I tightened my grip on the wheel to hide it. The boy finally said his mom was close. He said she was running. I asked how she could keep up with the car. He didn't answer. Carol turned to look at him, and that's when he smiled. His eyes blinked, one at a time. His breathing became shallow without me noticing. His shoulders were tight, almost locked in place, and my jaw hurt from watching him clench his. I kept adjusting my grip on the wheel because my palms were slick with sweat. Every few seconds I checked the mirrors again, even though nothing new appeared. Carol noticed my tension and asked if I was okay, but my voice came out stiff when I answered. I didn't feel okay, and my body reacted faster than my thoughts could keep up. My stomach dropped hard, and fear hit me all at once. Not panic, not screaming fear, but the kind that makes your body go cold. I looked back at the road, and my foot pressed down on the gas without me deciding to do it. In the headlights, something appeared behind us, low to the ground, fast, moving in a way that made no sense. It ran on all fours, but its body didn't move like an animal. Its head stayed level, locked on the car, while the rest of it stretched and contracted with each step. Before the impact, everything sharpened. The sound of the engine, Carol breathing fast, my own pulse pounding in my ears. I could feel how weak we were inside that car, how thin the doors suddenly felt. The thing opened its mouth as it ran. I saw teeth meant to tear, not chew. The boy in the back seat let out a short laugh, and his body started to change. His limbs bent wrong, his shape shifted, skin pulling tight over moving bone. I swerved, too late. As the creature closed the distance, my vision narrowed. I couldn't focus on anything except the shape behind us and the road directly ahead. My arms felt weak, like they might stop responding at any moment, and I had to force them to keep steering straight. My foot pressed harder on the gas, my leg trembling from the effort. Carol grabbed the handle above the door, her knuckles turning white, her breathing fast and uneven. The car left the road and crashed hard into the ditch. Metal screamed, glass shattered, and my head slammed forward. When I came back to myself, everything hurt, and the world felt tilted. Carol was screaming my name, and that sound snapped me into motion. Before I could reach her, weight slammed into the hood. The windshield cracked under the pressure, spreading lines across the glass. The creature's face pressed close, its features twisted, stretched into something almost human, but not enough to be mistaken. It ripped the passenger door open and grabbed Carol. She fought, kicking and clawing, her fear loud and real. I tried to move faster, but my leg wouldn't work right. I dragged myself across the seat, useless, watching every second pass. The creature pulled her out onto the road. I heard her head hit the asphalt. I screamed until my throat burned. Then headlights flooded everything, and a pickup truck hit the creature at full speed. Bone broke. The impact threw it into the trees. At the edge of the forest, the boy stood watching, his face twisted in panic before he ran into the dark. Pain shot through my leg when I tried to stand, sharp and immediate, making me gasp out loud. My hands slipped on the seat fabric as I dragged myself forward, every movement slow and clumsy. I could feel my heart slamming against my ribs, hard enough to hurt. My mouth was dry, my tongue heavy, and I couldn't form words fast enough to call Carol's name again as she was pulled farther away from me. People arrived quickly after that. Sirens, voices, hands pulling me away from the wreck. Carol was alive, barely, her body torn and bleeding. I couldn't stop shaking, even when they wrapped a blanket around me. They asked questions. I answered some of them, not all. The story became an animal attack. Everyone agreed on that because it was easier. The driver swore he hit a deer. No one argued. No one searched the forest for long. No body was found. No explanation was needed. I knew better, but I stayed quiet. Carol survived, but parts of that night are gone from her memory. Doctors say trauma does that. I don't correct them. It's better this way. I don't drive on rural highways anymore. I avoid empty roads. I avoid places where help is far away. I stay where people are, even if I don't talk to them.
My friends Leon and Sean and I wanted to go to the woods for a few days to clear our minds and have new adventures. We went to a much more remote forest about which there are several urban legends, but that's the case with almost all forests, and we didn't believe in those things. The road to the camping area was narrow and poorly marked. There were no other cars, no cabins, no signs of recent activity. Our phones lost signal long before we arrived. I noticed it and felt uneasy, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the one who complained over nothing. We set up camp quickly. 2 tents, the fire pit, a small table. The forest around us looked normal, but it felt empty. No animals, no distant movement. I told myself it was just a quiet place. As night fell, we sat near the fire and talked about random things. Work, old stories, plans that didn't matter. I kept glancing at the trees without realizing it. I wasn't scared yet, but I wasn't comfortable either. When the fire started to fade, Sean asked who wanted to get more wood. Leon stood up immediately and grabbed the flashlight. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even look back at us. He just walked toward the trees and disappeared into the dark. At first, I wasn't worried. A few minutes passed, then more. I called his name once, then again. There was no answer. Sean joked that Leon was probably trying to scare us. I didn't laugh. We walked closer to the trees, calling out louder. The flashlight beam from Leon was gone. The forest stayed silent. That silence began to feel heavy, like it was pressing down on us. We waited longer than we should have. When we finally heard something, it wasn't a voice calling back. It was a low, broken sound, uneven and strained, coming from deeper in the woods. We followed the sound together, moving slowly. My hands were shaking and my chest felt tight. I kept thinking that whatever we were about to find wasn't going to be simple or easy. We found Leon on the ground near a fallen tree. The moment I saw him, panic hit me hard. His clothes were torn. His skin was scraped and dirty. His face looked swollen, wrong in a way I couldn't ignore. He was alive, but barely responsive. Sean dropped beside him, calling his name over and over. Leon tried to speak, but the words came out slow and broken. His breathing was uneven, and his eyes wouldn't focus properly. I felt sick just looking at him. Getting him back to camp was difficult. He leaned heavily on us, barely able to stand. Every step made him let out weak sounds of pain. My heart was racing, and I kept turning around, afraid something would come out of the trees behind us. Before anything else happened, there was a stretch of time where everything felt frozen. Leon sat on the ground, wrapped in a blanket, shaking. The fire crackled weakly. The forest stayed quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. A noise came from behind the camp, slow and uneven, like someone moving carefully. Fear hit me instantly, sharp enough to make my stomach drop. I looked at Sean, then at the injured Leon on the ground. Leaving them felt wrong, but staying felt worse. I told Sean not to move and stepped toward the sound. I walked into the trees with the flashlight shaking in my hand. My breathing was loud, rushed, and completely out of control. Every few steps I stopped, listening, forcing myself forward even though my legs felt weak. Then someone stepped into the light. It was Leon, clean, unharmed, standing upright. My mind locked up, unable to process what I was seeing. Relief and confusion crashed together so hard it made me dizzy. He spoke fast, explaining that he had gotten lost, that something chased him deep into the woods, something that didn't move right. He said he hid, ran, and kept moving until he was sure it was gone. His voice shook, and this time it sounded real. I told him we already found him and that he was hurt back at camp. Leon's face changed immediately. Fear replaced confusion. He grabbed my arm and told me that wasn't possible. He said the thing following him could copy voices and shapes. His grip was weak, his hand trembling badly. He tried to move faster, but his legs gave out. He stumbled, breathing hard, barely able to stay standing. I didn't stop. I pulled my arm free and ran. Sean screamed. I ran alone, branches hitting my face and arms as I pushed through the trees. Leon shouted my name behind me, his voice breaking, telling me to stop, telling me not to go back. He couldn't keep up. The scream from the camp drowned everything else. When I reached the firelight, the scene was already destroyed. The blanket lay empty on the ground. Sean was on his knees, dragging himself backward in the dirt. The thing that had been sitting with us wore Leon's face, but its body moved wrong now. Joints bending too far, head tilted unnaturally. Sean tried to scream again, but the sound cut off when the creature grabbed him by the throat. I shouted without thinking, throwing a rock that hit its shoulder and did nothing. It turned its head toward me slowly, eyes calm and focused. There was a brief pause where everything felt unbearably clear. Sean's legs kicked weakly. The creature's skin shifted, struggling to stay in shape. Then it released him and charged toward me. I stumbled and fell hard, knocking the air out of my lungs. It was on me immediately, heavy and cold, pressing me into the ground. Its face was inches from mine, skin stretched tight, mouth opening wider than it should. I hit the ground hard, the air leaving my lungs in dry gasps. The creature was on me immediately, its weight crushing my chest, pinning my arms uselessly against the dirt. I couldn't push it away. I couldn't reach for anything. My hands slipped on the ground as I tried to move, panic flooding my body so fast I couldn't think. Its face was inches from mine, wearing Leon's features stretched too tight, eyes fixed on me without emotion. Its mouth opened wider than it should have, and a wet, uneven sound came from deep inside its throat. I kicked blindly, my heel scraping against its leg, doing nothing to slow it down. I knew with absolute clarity that I was not strong enough to stop it. A sound behind it pulled its attention away. The real Leon screamed my name from the edge of the trees. The creature froze for a second, then slowly lifted its weight off me. I didn't wait to understand why. I rolled onto my side and crawled away, my body shaking so badly I could barely move. The creature turned away from me and grabbed Sean's body, dragging him across the ground toward the trees. It didn't rush, it didn't struggle. It took her like it had already decided this is how it would end. I forced myself up and ran, grabbing Leon as he stumbled toward me. We reached the car without looking back. The engine started after a short delay that felt endless. As I drove, I saw movement between the trees and the mirror, slow and steady, watching us leave. Sean was never found. The official report said he got lost. No one searched long enough to find anything else. Leon survived, but he is not the same. He panics when someone calls his name from behind. Once he told me he heard his own voice calling to him while he was hiding. I think about how calmly it sat with us, how patient it was. Whatever took Sean learned enough, and it knows how to wait. I'm sure it will attack again, but not me.
I wasn't doing anything special that night. Just TV, half a pizza from yesterday, and a room too quiet to feel comfortable. Around midnight, I paused the show and went to the kitchen for leftovers. The fridge light hit me in the face, and the cold air felt good. I grabbed the box, popped it open, and took a bite straight from it. As I turned to head back, I saw something out of place in the living room. There was a husky on the couch. Big, muscular, gray and white. Thick coat, head straight, eyes locked on me. I stopped walking. I hadn't heard anything. No bark, no scratching. I didn't even own a dog. I just sat there looking. I didn't move at first, just stood there in the hallway between the kitchen and the living room, holding the pizza box. The dog didn't blink, didn't twitch. Its breathing wasn't visible. Nothing about it moved at all. I set the box on the kitchen counter and slowly reached toward the drawer where I kept a heavy flashlight. When I turned back, the dog was still there, but now it was sitting more upright, almost too straight, like it wasn't built to sit the way dogs do. I tried to think logically. Maybe the door had been unlocked and it wandered in, but I knew that wasn't true. I lock everything, always. I walked to the front door, locked, deadbolt secure. No windows broken. No sign of anything forced open. That thing had gotten in another way. Or had it been there the whole time? I stepped into the living room. The flashlight trembled in my hand. The second I got close, the dog stood. Not fast, not aggressive, but too smooth. It stepped down from the couch like it knew I wouldn't move fast enough to stop it. There was no warning before it bolted. No growl, no bark. It launched at me like something shot out of a cannon. I threw the flashlight and dodged left. It slammed into the side table and shattered it in one hit. The noise was deafening. I ran back down the hallway and slammed my bedroom door shut, twisting the lock until it clicked. Then I heard it breathing on the other side. Deep, ragged, steady, like lungs pushing too hard inside something too tight. It dragged its claws, fingers, down the door. Not fast, just slow enough to remind me it wasn't going anywhere. Then silence. I grabbed the bat under my bed.
I didn't even play baseball anymore, but I kept it just in case. I stayed against the wall, eyes locked on the door, waiting for it to move again. When it did, it wasn't trying to break in. It was scratching, in patterns, small strokes, then longer ones. Testing the frame, tapping the handle. Not animal behavior, not random, like it was thinking. Then everything went quiet, for way too long. I opened the bedroom window to escape, but the nails were back. I had pulled them out last spring. Now they were hammered in again, from the outside. Dozens of them, bent and crooked. My blood froze. I turned, and the door to the room was open. I didn't hear it unlock. I didn't hear it creak. It was just open. I stepped back. The hallway was pitch black. I couldn't see anything past the frame. I raised the bat, inching toward the door, expecting it to burst through. But it didn't. Nothing happened. Until the light behind me flickered and went out. Something was in the room. I swung the bat behind me and hit something hard. Something that growled like a man choking through broken glass. The sound wasn't right. I turned and saw it for a second. Just a flash. On the wall, crawling upside down, spine bending wrong. The dog's face didn't change, but the body underneath it was ripping itself into something that didn't match. I ran through the hallway and into the kitchen. It was darker than before. The fridge was open. The pizza was gone. Claw marks dug deep into the tile near the counter. One cabinet door was torn clean off. I grabbed a knife, a real one this time. Heavy, the kind I'd never had to use for anything besides frozen meat. Then I heard the sound. Not footsteps, something dragging across the ceiling. Slow, scraping, like bones on drywall. I ducked and moved under the table, holding the knife tight. Something thumped above me. Then again. Then it dropped. Straight down from the ceiling into the hallway. I saw it clearly this time. The limbs were too long. The skin was stretched thin. It had a dog's face, but the body underneath was wrong. Parts of it pulsed. The legs bent backward, then forward again, snapping loudly with each step. It twitched as it moved, but like it didn't fully understand how to walk in the skin it wore. It turned toward me. I froze, crouched under the table, no more than 6 feet away from it. It reached the table, stopped. But I scrambled to my feet and ran. Behind me, it didn't chase upright. It scrambled like a spider, limbs smacking the floor in uneven bursts. I turned the corner toward the back of the house just as it swiped at my foot. One of its claws sliced through the leg of my jeans and grazed skin. I almost fell flat. I didn't try to hide. It saw me. It started walking fast now, hands dragging on the ground. I threw the knife as hard as I could. It hit it somewhere in the side and stuck for a second, but it didn't stop. I grabbed the cast iron skillet from the counter and swung with everything I had. It connected with its shoulder, and then the bone underneath snapped loud. I backed up toward the door. The moment it saw that I was running, it lunged. But I fell into the yard, grass, dirt, blood in my mouth. I didn't stop. I ran barefoot down the street until I couldn't breathe. The police didn't believe a word I said. Of course they didn't. No signs of forced entry, no prints, no blood trail. They said maybe I had a seizure or a breakdown. But they missed one thing. On the couch, in the exact spot where it had been sitting, was a single tuft of fur. Coarse, gray and white. Still warm.
I was just trying to make a video of my dogs. That was the plan. Nothing fancy. I was sitting on the floor of the dining room, phone in hand, filming them while they wrestled and tripped over each other like they always do. It was around 9 p.m. The only lights on were the ones in the kitchen and the dining area. The rest of the apartment was dark, including the long hallway that led to the bedrooms and the front door. To keep the dogs from running around and making a mess, I put up one of those indoor baby fences at the start of the hallway. They never liked going down there anyway. Too dark, too quiet. They always stayed close to me, which I appreciated. That night, though, something was off. They weren't wrestling like they usually did. They froze. All three of them, just staring down the hallway. I lowered the phone thinking maybe they heard someone outside, but they weren't barking. Their ears were up, their bodies tense, tails stiff. One of them gave a soft growl. I followed their gaze. I couldn't see anything at first. The hallway was pitch black, but then I saw it too. Just above the edge of the baby fence, deep in the shadows near the bedroom door, a face, pale, motionless, with hollow eyes staring straight at us. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared, trying to convince myself that it was a trick of the light. Maybe something hanging from the door, a jacket, a poster, anything but a person. But it blinked. I saw the slow, deliberate motion of its eyelids. It wasn't some weird object. It was someone. The hallway leads to the front door. I kept it locked, always. It was on the 8th floor. No balconies, no fire escapes. No way someone could just get in. But there he was, staring at me and my dogs like he'd been there for hours. Like he knew I'd eventually see him. I didn't have Wi-Fi. I'd been meaning to fix it, but I hadn't gotten around to it. No signal either. Thick concrete walls. I was completely cut off. I whispered to the dogs, trying to move slowly, but they wouldn't budge. They were just still, frozen. I stood up and took a step toward the hallway. The figure didn't move. That made it worse, like he was waiting for something. Or someone. There was a pause, long enough for the tension to build in my chest, my throat tightening as my breath slowed. It felt like time wasn't moving. The face didn't twitch, didn't lean forward, didn't do anything. That made it feel more real, more dangerous. I grabbed the nearest chair and lifted it like a weapon. "If you don't get out of here, I'll let the dogs loose." Nothing. Then, from the hallway, a voice. Calm. Cheerful. Like someone calling a kid in from playing. "Come here, little doggy." Amazingly, one of them started wagging his tail and trotted toward the hallway. I reached out to grab him, but I was too slow. He jumped the fence and disappeared into the dark. There was a short yelp. Then silence. I didn't move. I couldn't tell if I was more scared for my dog or terrified of what was behind that face. The other two dogs backed away, ears down now, whining. I couldn't leave them, but I also couldn't stand there and do nothing. Then, the lights cut out. Every bulb in my apartment died at once. I was left in total darkness. I dropped to my knees and scrambled for my phone, hoping to use the flashlight. As soon as I turned it on, I saw him. He was closer, past the fence, inside the hallway now. The light caught only part of his face. The side of his mouth was smiling. He whispered something I couldn't make out, but I saw his lips moving. Then he took a step toward me. I backed away, crawling on the floor. I could hear him walking now. Slow steps, bare feet on wood. No rush. He knew I was trapped. The two dogs growled but didn't charge. I wanted to scream, but I knew it wouldn't help. No one would hear. I ducked behind the kitchen island, trying to steady my breathing. He wasn't in a rush. That was the part that scared me most. He walked like he belonged here, like he knew every inch of the place, like this was his home, not mine. He moved fast. 1 second he was 10 feet away. The next he was on top of me. I swung the phone, caught his jaw. He grunted but didn't fall. His hands went for my throat. I bit him hard, enough to draw blood. He shouted and pulled back. I grabbed one of the dining chairs and shoved it between us. He hid it away like it was made of paper. The dogs lunged, barking like maniacs now. One of them bit his leg. He kicked it so hard that I heard my dog yelp and hit the wall. I rushed to grab something, anything. I found a fork on the table and stabbed blindly. I felt it sink into something. He howled, but he didn't stop. He grabbed me by the hair and yanked me backward. My head hit the floor, hard. For a second, things went blurry. I tried to crawl. He climbed on top, trying to pin me. I scratched, punched, elbowed, anything to keep from grabbing my neck again. He said something then, real soft, right in my ear.
I've been watching you for weeks.
That made me go numb. I thought he'd just broken in. I didn't know he'd been planning this. I fought harder. The dogs came back. One jumped on his back, biting down. Another went for his ankle. He lost balance. I used that to shove him off. We both scrambled to our feet. He tried to run, but the dogs blocked him. He turned toward the window, maybe thinking he could climb down. I grabbed the only heavy thing nearby, the floor lamp, and hit him square in the back. He tripped, fell toward the window. It wasn't open, but the glass was thin. He crashed through. I saw his body disappear, flailing down 8 stories. Then, silence. I collapsed on the floor, panting, shaking. One dog licked my face. The other stood at the hallway door, barking. I went over, slow, flashlight trembling in my hand. I pushed open the bathroom door. There he was, the missing dog, safe, scared but unharmed. The psycho had just locked him in. The cops didn't believe me at first, not until they found his body and the camera hidden behind the vent cover in my bedroom. It had been there for weeks. He'd been watching everything. They told me his name. It didn't matter. I didn't care. He was just a freak who thought he could make me part of his little project. I moved out a week later, found a place on the 3rd floor with Wi-Fi and bars on every window. The dogs are fine now. They sleep near me every night. I still keep the baby fence, not because of them, but because I need to know if they ever freeze again. If they ever stare at the hallway like they did that night, I'll be ready.
When I signed the lease, I didn't ask questions. The rent was cheap, the neighborhood was quiet, and I needed to get out of my last place fast. It was 1-story house, nothing special. 2 bedrooms, an old heater, walls the color of wet sand. The carpet had stains, the windows were stuck, and the whole place smelled like cleaning chemicals. I didn't care. I just wanted a fresh start. I moved in with my puppy, Luna. She was 5 months old, small, nervous, still getting used to the leash. She followed me everywhere. She'd cry if I left the room. We were close. Maybe too close. But when you live alone and barely talk to anyone, a dog can feel like a second heartbeat. The first few days were normal. I unpacked, built a crappy desk, figured out how the stove worked. Luna took the place fast, until she didn't. On the 6th night, I was doing dishes. She started barking towards the hallway. Not a casual bark. She was loud, aggressive, and locked in. I looked over and saw her standing stiff, tail low, eyes fixed on the wall next to the hallway door. I thought maybe she heard a mouse or water in the pipes, but she wouldn't stop. I walked over, checked the wall, and even knocked on it. It was solid. She backed up like she didn't want me near it. That was the first time I felt that pinch in my gut. That quiet, sharp kind of alertness. Something was off, but I didn't know how deep it went. Luna didn't bark during the day. She was calm, normal, ate, slept, played. But as soon as it got dark, she'd sit near the hallway and just stare. Not barking this time, just frozen, ears flat, eyes locked on that wall, the same spot. I even tried putting a chair in front of it to see if she'd look somewhere else. She didn't. She just adjusted her position and kept watching. I recorded her on my phone, mostly to laugh at how weird she was being. The video showed nothing, just her, frozen, then barking like hell. She looked scared, but there was nothing in frame. That was the worst part. There was nothing to explain it, just her, reacting to something I couldn't see. 3 nights in, the hallway curtain had a rip down the middle. I thought maybe Luna jumped at it and got her claw stuck, but she was too small to reach that high. It looked like it had been cut, straight, from top to bottom. I touched the edges. They were clean, not torn, not chewed. That same night, I heard it. It was faint but steady, a knocking sound, too soft even to be wood settling. It came from the wall, the one she stared at. I stood near it, listening. My chest got tight. 3 knocks, then nothing. I pressed my hand to the drywall, kept it there, cold, still. Then, just as I was about to step back, I felt it. 1 tap, from the other side, deliberate, solid. I backed away and didn't go near that wall for the rest of the night. I started locking my bedroom door at night. I don't know why. It just made me feel like I had control, even if I didn't. Luna refused to sleep in the living room anymore. She'd whine until I let her in the bedroom, then curl up next to the bed, facing the hallway, always alert. That night, at 3:09 a.m., I woke up to the hallway light flickering. I hadn't turned it on. It was just strobing on and off by itself. I sat up, listening. The air was dead quiet. Luna was under the bed, shaking. I heard 3 knocks again, this time louder, not behind the wall, on my door. I didn't move. I just stared at the door handle, waiting to see if it turned. It didn't, but something scraped against the wood, long, dragging like nails across the surface. Then, silence. I sat there until sunrise. I opened the door in daylight. No marks, no footprints, but I found something else. The picture frame on the hallway wall had been turned upside down. Nothing else was touched. Not the table, not the shelves. Just that one picture, flipped like someone had done it slowly. That afternoon, I noticed 3 scratches down my arm, thin, spaced evenly, like fingers. I didn't remember getting them, but they stung when I showered. That evening, Luna didn't bark. She hid. I found her wedged between the couch and the wall, refusing to come out. I set the phone to recording again. Around 3:15 a.m., the hallway curtain moved. Not like from the wind. It lifted, slowly, held there. Then it dropped, no draft, window shut. It just moved, like someone had picked it up. The video didn't show anything else, but Luna didn't sleep for the next 24 hours. I bought cameras, real ones, not my phone. Motion activated, night visioned. One for the hallway, one for the living room. I set them up and didn't tell anyone. I didn't want advice. I didn't want comfort. I wanted proof. The first night, the footage glitched. 2 solid minutes of static at exactly 3:12 a.m. Before that, the hallway was empty. After that, the curtain was torn clean down the middle. Again, I watched the footage 10 times. Nothing visible, just the curtain intact, then static, Shredded. Second night, I got more. The living room camera caught Luna pacing in circles. She barked once, then backed up until she hit the wall. Her body was shaking. She looked towards the hallway. Something walked past. Fast, blurred, humanoid, pale, thin. I paused the footage frame by frame. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was real. I didn't sleep that night. I kept Luna in my room with the door locked. She wouldn't eat. She stared at the wall and whimpered. I heard scratching sounds in the ceiling, then on the floor. Then, around 3:15 a.m., something hit the wall from the inside so hard it shook the picture frames. I jumped out of bed, grabbed Luna, and hid in the bathroom. I stayed there until morning. Third night, I watched the cameras live on my laptop. I couldn't sleep, so I sat at the kitchen table with Luna under my chair. Everything was quiet until 3:11 a.m. Then, motion triggered in the hallway. At first, nothing. Then, from the left edge of the frame, something crawled out of the wall. It didn't open anything. It didn't break anything. It just came through, like the drywall didn't matter. It was tall but hunched, its arms dragging behind. The skin wasn't right, almost translucent. It had no face, just smooth skin and deep sockets where I should have been. It stood up fully, turned its head, and looked straight into the camera, not the lens, at me, through the feed. I froze. I heard something creak in the hallway. In real life, not the video. Something moving. I shut the laptop and grabbed Luna. She barked once, high-pitched, terrified. Something slammed into the other side of the wall, then silence. I didn't breathe. I waited. Then, the hallway light flickered once and died. I didn't open the door until the sun was up. When I checked the camera footage again, the thing walked down the hallway and into the kitchen. It stood there for 2 minutes, not moving, just facing the table. Then it backed into the wall and vanished. I watched it again and again. It never looked at Luna, never touched her. It was like she didn't exist. I didn't stay another night. I packed everything in an hour, threw clothes into trash bags, took Luna, my laptop, and drove. I didn't tell the landlord. I didn't care. I left the keys in the mailbox and didn't even lock the door. I rented a motel for a week. Luna didn't bark once. She slept. I didn't. I watched the last few clips on the camera. The final one showed my bedroom door opening by itself. The thing was inside, standing near my bed, watching me sleep. I never moved. Luna didn't react. It stayed there for 10 minutes. Then it turned and walked back through the wall. I deleted the footage that night. I don't care if anyone believes me. I feel that this creature is somehow still present if I keep the recordings. We live in a different house now, a small apartment. No hallways, no curtains. Luna sleeps by the door. She eats. She plays. She's normal again. But I'm not. I still wake up at 3:12 a.m. I don't know why. I check every wall in the apartment. I leave the lights on. I keep my phone on video mode every night, but I never press record. I don't want proof anymore. I just want to keep breathing. Some nights, Luna growls in her sleep. When she does, I stay awake till sunrise. I don't move. I don't blink. I just stare at the wall and wait.
Have you ever been to Wendy's? In general, it is a good restaurant. The food is pretty good, and they have more variety than the rest of the burger places. Like McDonald's with Ronald, they also have their own mascot. She is a very cute, red-headed girl. I never knew if she is based on a real person or if they just created her for the logo. But what I do know is that once, someone disguised as she tried to kill me. It all started one normal night. On weekends, I have to babysit my son, and his favorite place to eat is Wendy's. He used to throw a big tantrum when I didn't take him, and over time, it had become our favorite father-son activity. Everything was going well until one day, I noticed something strange. As we left the place, A person disguised as the Wendy's girl greeted us. There was nothing strange about this. What did scare my son was that the whole costume was covered in blood. After we passed her, she walked behind us, still waving at us. My son started to get really scared and started to speed up his pace. I thought about confronting this person, but to tell the truth, I'm a pacifist. I don't know how to fight, and I don't want to. I would if it was to defend my son, but what would that accomplish? I would only put him at risk. I decided to pick up the pace and get into the car as soon as possible. Just a few steps away, the girl was still waving at us in a terrifying manner. Several weeks passed, and my son was somewhat reluctant to return to the restaurant, until one day. I talked to his mother, and she convinced him. I was sure nothing would happen. Maybe that was a one-time thing. If this person was stalking all the customers like that, she had probably already been kicked out. With many doubts, my son went with me to the restaurant. Little by little, I could see how the spark began to return. There was no trace of the strange woman, and he began to feel more and more comfortable. We spent a great night together eating. It seemed like everything that had happened would be in the past as a bad and bizarre memory. We made our way to the car, and the parking lot was empty. But this was a good thing since our stalker from that time wasn't there either. We got into the car and I started it up. But at that moment, the thing I was most afraid of happened. In front of the car, preventing us from moving forward, the woman in the costume was waving at us. Her costume was still bloody, and just like last time, looked like fresh blood. Her greetings were much more frenetic than the previous time. This time, she was waving her hand violently. As soon as he saw her, my son began to cry as if he had recalled an event that had kept him awake at night for many nights. I knew it had affected him, but this was much worse than I thought. I honked at her to run, but instead of listening to me, she only came closer, walking in front of the car and even standing on top of it. I quickly put on the seatbelt while I listened as this terrifying woman walked on the roof. I took advantage of the situation to try to speed up the car, but as if sensing that I was going to do it, she laid down and stuck her head inside of the window, showing us a big knife in the process. I accelerated the car. But in a matter of seconds, we lost control and crashed into a pole. All the car's tires were flat. The woman had fallen from the accident, so I took the opportunity to grab my son and run back to the Wendy's. On the way, the woman caught up with me in a matter of seconds and threw me to the ground. My son fell away, and as I yelled at him to go to the restaurant to report what was happening, the woman tried to press her knife against me. She was very strong. Somehow, her strength was equal to mine, which in itself was not much. My arms began to give way, and the knife came closer and closer to my throat until suddenly, it was all over. Some security men threw the woman away from me, and I, terrified, stepped back. I took a deep breath because it was all over. But a battle cry brought me back to reality. The woman was running at full speed, and in one leap, she lunged towards me to plunge her knife into me. The security men caught her in mid-jump, grabbed her knife, and held her until the police arrived. When they took off her mask, my son started crying, and I was shocked. That person was not a Wendy's employee. She was my ex-wife, my son's mother. After a while, she confessed that she was dressing up to scare my son so that he would no longer want to spend time with me or have a bonding activity like she was doing. She had no intention of killing me, but that night, everything went out of control. She had taken drugs that took her out of herself, and because of that, all the subtlety in her plan was gone. She went into a state of euphoria and with a knife already in her hand, tried to kill me and give my son a trauma he would never forget. After that, I kept custody of my son. He still goes to see his mother in prison, but he doesn't want to. I always convince him to do it, to forgive her, but I must tell you the truth. I will never do it. Since that day, every time my son and I go to Wendy's, we are afraid. The food tastes much more bitter, and we are just thinking about leaving. But we keep lying to ourselves that everything we went through didn't affect us. At the end of the day, even though she ended up in jail, my ex-wife, the woman dressed as the little girl at Wendy's, got her way.
Back when I was a teenager, I had a girlfriend named Olivia. Although she was a teenager too, she was in college. 2 years older than me and much more mature. She was the nicest human I'd ever known. We lived in the same neighborhood, played together, went to the same school until she graduated, and had the same group of friends. So it wasn't a surprise to our parents when we both announced that we were dating. She was 19 and I was 17 when we both decided to work at our local Wendy's. It was a small outlet and mostly the college and high school crowd frequented that restaurant. We wanted to buy a car so I could drive the 4 miles out of our town to visit her at community college. We were both very excited about the prospect of having a car and not having to borrow our parents' cars to see one another. Most weekends we worked late in the restaurant and often offered to close the restaurant. This would allow us to spend more time together. Although Olivia was older than me, she was a short, petite girl, whereas I was a 6-foot-tall football player. Also, working late for an hour or so paid us more, which meant we could add more money to our collection to buy a car before the summer break was over. I was very happy to get so much time with Olivia. Little did I know that that's all I was going to get with her. At that young age, we had planned our whole lives together. I was excited to join her in the community college, though I could easily secure a spot in the Ivy League colleges with my sports background. However, I wanted to be with her, so I decided to go to the community college. One evening while we were working in the restaurant as usual, a group of my high school friends came in to have a quick bite. I was quite popular in the college, so they all greeted me and ordered their food. That evening, it was again just me and Olivia in the Wendy's, as our co-workers had some emergency. The kids from my school were enjoying themselves in one of the booths when Olivia and I were getting their orders ready. "Hey there." Sam had walked up to the counter. "Hey, Sam. Anything I could get you other than your order?" "No, Jack. I'm here to tell you guys something. You know my dad is a cop, right? So he received intel from one of the other sheriffs that there's a killer on the loose in our county, and he is targeting shopkeepers, workers, waiters, etc., who are alone in the shops and restaurants at night. You guys work pretty late. Just take care, okay?" Olivia was listening too, as Sam warned us. "Okay, buddy. Thanks for giving us a heads up. We'll take care." With that, Sam returned to his table where my other friends sat. After my friends left, there were no more customers, so we decided to head home. A week later, Olivia and I realized that we had collected the required amount to purchase the car we both wanted. With the help of my dad, we bought the car and were super happy to drive to and from work every day. It was a black Toyota, nothing fancy, but at least it was a first step towards our future together. I remember we were both so happy. In early July one evening, the other workers had left early to enjoy some movie that had just been released. Although now we didn't need extra money to save up for the car, we still enjoyed working late. So that evening too, we were more than happy to cover up for our colleagues. Our car was parked right in front of the entrance to the door in the parking lot. Olivia was cleaning up the inside counters and I was setting the tables right. That's when we heard the alarm of our car go off. It was so loud that for a second we were confused. No one was in the restaurant except us, and in the past hour or so, we hadn't spotted anyone in the parking lot as well. This happened back when there were no CCTV cameras, so we couldn't even look into the camera feed to see if anyone was there. The alarm was still going off. Someone had to do something to stop the noise. A few minutes later, I saw the most horrid scene of my life. I don't remember why I looked up, but when I did, I saw him there. He was standing with his face pressed against the window of the restaurant, and his eyes were pitch black, without any pupils or anything. His face looked demonic, and he had a silly grin pasted on it. I was terrified just looking at him. But when I realized that Olivia was still cleaning the counters, my fear spiked sky high. She was unaware of this person still busy cleaning the damn counter. The man and I stared through the glass at one another. His smile didn't waver an inch, and his dark matted hair was pasted to his face. His skin was yellow and unnaturally textured. He had a big butcher knife in his hand, which he raised and showed me through the window. I was helpless at that moment. I watched the man run towards Olivia behind the counter as I stood there beside our new car in the parking lot, looking at them from outside. No matter how fast I ran, I was sure he would kill my girlfriend. I was truly, utterly helpless. I sprinted towards the doors, nonetheless, and yanked the front door open. I jumped behind the counter and saw the lifeless body of Olivia, covered in blood and with knife marks on her neck and torso. She was dead, and the knife was lying beside her. I knelt and held her body in my hand and sobbed. However, one thing I noticed was that the killer was nowhere to be seen. There was no back door to the restaurant and no other exit either, and he surely didn't walk out of the front exit. So, where did he go? I don't remember what happened next, how the cops got there, and for how long I was holding my girlfriend's lifeless, bloody body. The next thing I remember was the detective saying that it was an open and shut case, as I was the killer. They had found my fingerprints on the murder weapon when in fact, I'd never touched it. Also, they didn't find any footprints other than mine and Olivia's behind the counter, which concluded that I was the killer. No matter how much I tried to convince them that I wasn't the murderer and there was a man who did this, no one believed me. Not my parents, not the cops, nor my friends. Now, I stand before the same Wendy's restaurant that I and Olivia worked in, after being out of prison 35 years later. Till this day, I could not find the proof of the black-eyed man who killed my girlfriend and ruined my life. Was it I who really killed her? Or was there another man, or ghost perhaps? What do you guys think?
When I was a little girl, my mother told me that fear was an emotion that required to be conquered, but in case it was impossible to fight against it, the best solution would be to flee. I never seemed to understand what she meant until 3 months ago, when I finally came across a fearsome situation. But before I start telling you my dreadful story, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mary. When I graduated from high school, I got accepted to a college in another state. I was happy to move out of my family's house, as I did not have any patience to put up with my parents' unending fights. At first, I was really happy. I have never felt that free in my life. However, as years passed, I started to face the consequences of my lack of attention to the classes. They warned me over and over again, and eventually kicked me out of the college due to the classes I kept failing. I never had the courage to tell my parents about it, because I was afraid that they would force me to live with them again, and that was something I did not desire. Because I was not able to stay in the dorm, I had to find a place to live, and to be able to pay the rent, I had to work. I searched for a job and was desperate to find one. I searched the internet, hoping to find a suitable job, but I could not find any. After a couple of days, I ended up being a server in Wendy's. It was my first working experience, so I had a hard time to adjust to having a career. A couple of months passed, and I realized the fact that I got used to working there. Of course, I would get tired time to time, and sometimes rude customers would piss me off, but other than that, I was quite happy working in Wendy's. I was not aware that this beautiful first job experience of mine was about to turn into a nightmare. The day that horrible event occurred was 3 months ago. It was a busy day, and we were all exhausted as the time of closing arrived. Me and 2 other coworkers of mine stayed to close the restaurant. One of them was an old man who very rarely spoke to any of us. We did not know anything about him, but he would always gently smile and thank me whenever I helped him. His name was David, and that was actually all the information I had about him. The other one was Liam. He was an extremely thin man in his 30s. He had black bags under his eyes. His skin was dirty and pale. He smelt like a wet dog that had been living inside a trash bin. Even though he was not too wretched looking at him would still give me the creeps. He was a talkative person who enjoyed telling the same stories over and over again. As we were about to close the restaurant, Liam approached me and started to speak, as if I was eager to listen to one of his stories. A great sense of boredom filled my heart. I told him that I forgot to clean the bathrooms and walked away. Of course, it was an excuse to get away from him. I went inside the bathroom and started to wait. The bathroom did not need to be cleaned, as I had already done it a half an hour ago. But unfortunately, with Liam around, the bathroom was the only place I could find some peace. As I waited for 5 minutes, hoping that the others would finish their duties quickly so that I could go home as fast as I could, I heard footsteps coming towards the bathroom. The sound stopped, and I heard a knocking on the bathroom door. It was Liam. He told me that he was bored and that he wanted to speak with me. With a frustrated voice, I said, "I am busy. Why don't you go and talk with David?" He seemed to not understand or care about my frustration as he replied, "Everybody knows that David is not the chatty type. I tried talking with him, but got bored immediately. Also, I really enjoy having conversations with you." I sensed a sudden shift on his tone as he said the last sentence. His voice became unsettling. I did not respond. He started to talk about his life, but his speech topic quickly changed into a sexual life and how good was his performance in bed. While talking, I could hear his deep breathing sound. Obviously, I was disturbed by his speech, and I told him to leave me alone. With a devilish voice, he said, "I can show you how good I am in bed if you like me to." Once again, I screamed, "Leave me alone." My voice echoed in the bathroom. After a couple of seconds, I started to hear banging sounds, as if he was trying to break open the door. Thankfully, I was smart enough to lock the door, but this insane man was still trying to open the door. I cried for help. I screamed as loud as I could, hoping that David might come to my aid. After a while, Liam managed to break the door. As he stood there right before me, he locked his eyes on my breasts and grinned. He opened his eyes so wide that I thought they were going to pop out of their sockets. Of course, you want me to please you, my love," he said, as he started to approach me slowly. At that moment, I heard the breaking sound of glass, and when I looked behind Liam, I saw David with a broken bottle in his shaking old hand. I realized that David had broke the glass bottle on Liam's head. Although blood was pouring from his head, Liam was acting as if nothing happened. He continued to walk towards me. He grabbed hold of me with the skeleton-like hands. His grip was way more powerful than I expected. I wanted to fight back, but my body was totally frozen. David jumped on Liam and tried to pull him away from me. Liam pushed him so hard that he fell to the ground and hit his head on the floor. I felt like my body was paralyzed. I could not move a single muscle. When I thought everything was over, I heard the sound of my mother in my head, telling me to fight back or run away. Following the virtuous advice she gave me when I was a child, I found the strength to snap out of my paralyzed state. I pushed Liam back. He tried to grab me again, but I managed to run away from him. As I ran outside, I heard the police sirens. Seeing the blue and red lights shining as the police car arrived in front of the building, I felt a sense of relief. 2 officers rushed toward me. Still shook by the recent incident, tears burst out of my tired eyes. I cried and told them what happened. While I was telling them the story, one of them looked behind me and shouted, "He is running away!" They started to run, and I watched them chase Liam. I watched them as they disappeared into the darkness of the night. After a moment, I heard gunshots. The policeman came back and told me that they got him. Apparently, the police had to shoot Liam 9 times before he fell to the ground. I told them that David was lying inside, unconscious. They rushed inside and came out of the restaurant carrying David. "He seems to be okay," one of the officers said. They told me that after David heard my screaming, he called the police, and that was the reason they were able to arrive so quickly. I thanked David. I thanked the officers, and I asked them what they knew about Liam. They told me that, considering the way he resisted to the bullets, it was possible that Liam was under the influence of a substance. I resigned from my job at Wendy's the very next day. I called my parents and told them what happened. My father demanded me to return to them immediately. Normally, this would bother me, but after everything I went through, the idea of going back to my parents' house seemed good. I do not know why Liam was acting that way, but according to the police investigation, it is likely that he was a drug addict with an unstable mind. Although I know he is dead, I still wake up at night, seeing him in my nightmares, approaching me and saying, "Of course, you want me to please you."
My name is Brandon White, and I used to get food from the McDonald's restaurant close to my house every day. A couple of months ago, I walked in to get something and was attended by a new female employee named Mary. She was middle-aged, had short brown hair, and was slightly overweight. While I waited for my order, she tried to get to know me, making small talk. I didn't mind at the time. She seemed nice, and there was nothing odd about our conversation. After giving me my sandwich, I left, not knowing that visiting McDonald's that day would lead to my biggest mistake ever. The next few days after meeting her weren't that different from the first. But as more days went by, I began to notice something strange about Mary. For starters, Mary was always the one taking my orders. This was unusual for McDonald's. To make things worse, the conversations she tried to have with me only became weirder and left me uncomfortable in most situations. She would say strange things like how I looked so sexy and tasty, and sometimes ask me questions that no employee should have been interested in. Everything about Mary's behavior was odd. She looked almost 10 years older than me and didn't strike me as that sort of person in any way. Eventually, I began visiting another McDonald's far away from my house, deciding against reporting Mary and getting her fired. A couple of weeks went by, and one day, I walked into the new McDonald's and saw Mary working at the counter. I was shocked and expected her to tell me if she was filling in for someone, but instead, Mary acted as if she'd never left the old McDonald's and didn't address the situation at all. She resumed her usual attempts at small talk and disturbing remarks, but I simply ignored everything she said, got my order, and left. I decided not to go to McDonald's for a while, and only had it when a few friends placed orders at their apartments. I didn't know if Mary still worked there, but I wasn't eager to find out. One afternoon, while walking home after getting groceries, someone suddenly bumped into me out of nowhere, and most of my groceries failed. I bent over to pick them up, and the woman who had bumped into me began apologizing as she joined me to pick up the groceries. When I looked up to thank her, I was shocked to see Mary standing in front of me. I remained in silence as my mind raced. Was this woman stalking me, or was this just a coincidence? After standing there in silence, Mary finally said, "Well, young man, I'm in a hurry, so sorry about that," and left, acting like she didn't know who I was. I brushed it off again as a coincidence and walked home. As I got home, I realized my house keys weren't on me, but I was in a hurry and figured I had probably left without them, so I quickly got my spare key from under the mat, dropped my groceries inside, and left to meet up with my colleagues. My coworkers and I spent a couple of hours getting drunk and playing games on our day off. I left and headed home, but as I opened my door, something about it felt different. That feeling you get when someone else has been in your home was everywhere, but I was wasted, and all I wanted to do was take a shower, so I quickly looked around and headed to the bathroom. Later that night, I was alone in my living room watching HBO when my phone rang. I was curious about who could be calling me so late at night, so I answered with a simple, "Hello?" There wasn't a voice on the other end, but I could hear someone breathing heavily for about a minute before finally hearing a whispery voice say, "Come upstairs." I ended the call immediately, assuming it was some kids playing a prank, but something about it felt off, and despite my efforts, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and how I felt someone was in my home earlier that day. About 3 minutes later, my phone rang again, and it was the same number. I simply ignored it and tried to focus on something else. That's when I heard a noise coming from upstairs. I quickly switched off the TV and decided to listen more closely to make sure I wasn't hearing things. Sure enough, I heard a loud noise from upstairs, followed by another, and soon enough, I could tell they were footsteps, and someone was actually in my home.
I quickly grabbed my phone and called the police before heading to the kitchen and grabbing a knife. The house was silent for the next few minutes, so I began to walk up the stairs slowly to make sure there was actually an intruder. As I checked each room one after the other, I began to calm down and question if I heard anything at all. Eventually, there was only one room left to check, and as I opened the door to the guest room, I was filled with a feeling of relief as all I could see was an empty room. And the sense of relief I had just gotten was quickly overcome with fear. As out of the corner of my eye, I could see a figure standing behind the door. Before I could say anything, the person jumped on me, knocking the knife out of my hand and settling on top of me, pinning both my arms under her. In that moment, all I could feel was terror as Mary looked me dead in the eyes before proceeding to grab the knife I had dropped. Mary slowly brought her head closer to me and began to sniff me, like she was taking in deep breaths. My skin began to crawl, and I began to struggle to get free, but there was no use, as Mary was a lot heavier than I was. She eventually stopped sniffing me and proceeded to say, "Oh, I missed you so much, baby. But you've been avoiding me lately. You looked so tasty today. I had to see you. And well, now I have to take a little bite." She smiled and continued, "Now, it'll hurt a little, but I'm sure you don't mind, darling." Mary quickly brought down the knife on my hand, taking my pinky finger clean off. The pain shot through my body, and I couldn't help but let out a piercing scream. Blood began to spill everywhere, and Mary couldn't hold back her laugh as she threw my finger in her mouth and chewed it down until nothing remained. At that point, I had begun to close my eyes as I slowly lost consciousness from the pain. That's when Mary said, "No, baby, don't do that. I was just about to have one of your tastier parts." She then proceeded to hold my eyelids open as she lowered the knife slowly towards my eye. Before I could begin to plead with her, police sirens filled the air, and I was immediately filled with relief. Mary quickly got off me and pointed the knife at me, saying, "No. How did they find out, baby? You didn't call them, did you?" One look at the woman in front of me, and I could tell she was absolutely crazy. She began pacing the room and was visibly worried, so I decided it was better to play into her game than act out, as I already knew how far she was willing to go. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was you waiting for me, so I called them. Just let me go down there and send them away, and I'll be right back." Mary looked at me with what seemed to be relief, and I could tell she truly believed what I had just said. She replied, "All right, honey, be quick now," and lowered the knife, letting me leave. I bolted downstairs with one thing in mind: get as far away from Mary as I could. As I stepped out of the house, I was met by a group of officers. They asked if anyone else was in the house before storming in and exiting with Mary in the next few minutes. Mary was taken away in tears as she screamed at me for betraying her and not keeping my word, confirming to the police that she was completely crazy. In the last few days, I've been informed by the authorities that Mary is wanted in several states for multiple counts of rape, assault, and suspicion of cannibalism. I was lucky enough to be the only one of her victims to survive her ordeal. That encounter still keeps me up at night, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about the first time I met Mary in McDonald's. I hope my story has helped you all realize that we really know nothing about the people who serve us and our families at McDonald's. In my case, I met a crazy serial killer who posed as a happy-go-lucky woman, but in your case, it just might be the devil who hands you your Happy Meal with a smile on their face. Hello, everyone. We are thrilled that you have been enjoying our videos. Your support means the world to us. If you've liked what you've seen, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. We would love to hear which one of our videos is your favorite. We're on a mission to reach 100,000 members in the SSG family, and with your help, we can achieve that goal. Thank you for being a part of our journey. Christmas is usually one of the best holidays of the year. The kids are always happy. There's food, parties, and presents. It's really that time of year when we can leave all our problems behind and concentrate on being happy, even if it's just for a day or two. The story I'm about to tell you was just before Christmas, in those days when we were getting ready for the holidays and it was all happy times. What neither I nor my children expected was that those moments of happiness would be interrupted because we had an appointment with the unknown. Something we didn't understand at the time, and still don't today, was stalking us. And you know what? It still is. If you don't know what you're up against, how can you defeat it? It all started on a snowy day. During those days, we decided to take a mini vacation and went to my parents' country house. My wife was hesitant to go since we had a lot of work to do when we got back. But the kids were on vacation from school and insisted all year to go, so we indulged them. It was only a few days before Christmas. We had already put up the Christmas tree and decorated our house in town. But the cabin still lacked some Christmas spirit. We brought some decorations to beautify the cabin a bit, but to my surprise, my parents had left us something. A human-sized Santa Claus. It looked like an animatronic, but it was very strange. It was too thin. Normally, Santa Clauses are similar to the real Santa, fat with a huge smile. But there was something weird about this one. His look was tetched. He looked like some Santa Claus out of some child's nightmares. I was about to put it away, but my kids saw it at the same time I did, and for some reason, they liked it. Kids really do have the weirdest tastes. Other than that, the day continued as normal. We spent the evening watching movies and eating something as a family. The kids seemed very entertained, and my wife and I were very happy about it. Nothing prepared us for what would happen the next day. After spending the night sleeping comfortably, a scream woke my wife and me at the same time. It was the scream of one of our children. As soon as we woke up, we both looked out the window where the scream was coming from. My two children were outside, running through the snow, running away from someone. When I looked back a little further, I clearly saw their attacker. No, it couldn't be true. It was the Santa Claus animatronics I had put up yesterday. This didn't make any sense. As I watched him run in the direction of my children, I could see him walk very naturally. This was not an animatronic or anything like that. It moved like a human, but it was so thin, who could fit into that costume? I told my wife to call the police as soon as possible while I went to get our children and protect them from their attacker. At that point, I didn't care about bundling up or getting a gun. I had to go as soon as possible. As soon as I got out, I did not go in the direction of my children, but towards my attacker, who for some reason was not running, but only walking in the direction of my children. I don't know what this being was or why it was attacking my children, but I knew I had to do something to stop it. With all my strength, I threw myself at him. I still thought that all this must have some explanation. Maybe it was a person disguised as a Santa. Yes, that must be it. That was the only logical explanation. A little confident from the lie I fed myself, I tried to take him down, but that's when despair and desolation took over my whole body. When I was just a few inches away from him, about to knock him down, I was overcome with a horrible feeling of fear and sadness that prevented me from moving forward. Defeated and crying, I fell to the ground, clutching my chest from the pain I felt. This was not the pain of a physical attack. It was not the pain of an illness. It was the pain one feels when one is very nervous or sad. Santa simply ignored me and kept walking in the direction of my children. Whatever it was, he was aware of what was happening to me. Possibly in some way, he caused it, since he didn't flinch an inch from my attack, knowing what was going to happen. After a few seconds that felt like hours, I gathered all my strength to get up and follow him. The pain and sadness I felt at that moment was so great that even though it faded as soon as Santa left, it still haunted me. For me, I would have stayed on the ground surrounded by ice crying, but I couldn't afford the luxury. That being was after my children, and I wouldn't let them feel for a second what I felt at that moment, or worse. I got up and ran as fast as I could through the ice. My children and Santa were already far away in the forest, but the sound of their screams guided me on the right path. With every centimeter I ran, I could feel that horrible feeling taking over my body again. The pain in my chest was getting bigger and bigger. I couldn't be far away. The screams became closer than ever until, crying against a tree, I found my two children. In front of them, the strange figure walked slowly in their direction. As soon as I saw this image, I turned to Santa Claus. You would think that nothing had changed from the last time I did it, and ended up on the ice crying. But for me, everything had changed. This time, I was watching as the strange being was about to attack my children, and at that moment, I didn't care about anything but protecting them. I ignored the pain, the fear, the sadness, the cold. All I could see was this thing approaching my children. With a war cry, I lunged at it and knocked it to the ice. Blinded by rage, I didn't realize what was really going on. I was just hitting an empty Santa Claus doll. All the feeling of fear and desperation had vanished the moment I made contact with them. Now I was doing nothing more than hitting an inanimate object while my children cried beside me. When I realized this, I stepped aside and went to hug my children while Santa stood destroyed next to us. It was all over. Once we got back, I threw all the parts of that Santa Claus in the trash and put a new one once we got home. I'll be honest with you, the new Santa Claus didn't last more than 2 days. Maybe I was still a little paranoid, but I could swear that every once in a while, it felt like it wasn't in the same position I left it in. As if his head or limbs were moving when no one was watching. Also, I couldn't shake this feeling. This feeling of paranoia that when I was near him, I was constantly being watched. For their part, my children didn't talk about it, but I could see in their eyes that they were terrified. At first, my wife thought everything I told her was a joke. But over time, she began to believe us. Although part of her thinks it's a strange collective paranoia. I can't blame her, and I can't blame you if you don't believe me. Not even in my wildest nightmares could I think something like this could happen. But I guess, as a human, there are things we can never understand. And you know what? It's okay. I don't want to understand what happened that day. I just don't want it to happen again. I just want my family to be safe.